ignored our legitimate oversight responsibilities and used their power to stage one political stunt after another. They have wasted countless taxpayer dollars on baseless investigations into President Biden and his family, desperate to find evidence for an absurd impeachment and desperate to distract from the mounting legal peril facing Donald Trump. They have fought tirelessly to stop efforts to fight malign foreign actors trying to influence and manipulate Americans through social media. They have unconstitutionally interfered in criminal litigation and attempted to bully state and local law enforcement officers. They have publicized the names of witnesses who did not further their political goals, leading to threats of death and physical violence against those witnesses and their families. They have cost any number of private institutions and companies millions of dollars in legal fees as they struggle to respond to ridiculous and overbroad requests for information and transcribed interviews. They have issued subpoenas for show without making meaningful attempts to get the information they seek by consent. They have levied low, baseless personal attacks on any prosecutor to bring charges against Donald Trump or January 6th rioters. They have attempted to discredit investigators who are not hard enough on Donald Trump's political opponents. They have supported those involved in the deadly attack on our Capitol on January 6th in an attempt to overthrow a lawful election. They have justified conduct that we all know to be wildly illegal, like the theft of classified materials and incitement to violence. And through it all, rather than try to unite the country or solve the problems that affect us all, they have sought to exploit our divisions for cynical, personal political gain. That is their goal, division. They want to divide this country and make our government appear like it's broken, because that is when their broken political party thrives. So today, I implore the public to see through the sham. I have no doubt that you will hear a deluge of conspiracy theories and baseless accusations. They will quote freely from so-called whistleblowers who have been broadly discredited or contradicted. They will viciously attack federal law enforcement. They will tell you that all 91 criminal charges against Donald Trump are part of a conspiracy, despite overwhelming evidence of each of Donald Trump's crimes. And they will attack Special Counsel Weiss, who was appointed, let us not forget, by Donald Trump, for not being hard enough on Hunter Biden. Republicans will continue doing what they've done for years, discrediting anyone who does not serve their political goals at any cost. And the shame of it is that in this hearing room, like on the House floor, where we are barreling towards a government shutdown while my Republican colleagues call each other names, we could be working together to put people over politics and to solve any number of problems affecting the American people. More than 30,000 Americans have died from gun violence so far this year alone. Guns have become the leading cause of death for children aged 1 to 17, surpassing car accidents. Domestic violent extremism and white nationalism.
Good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I apologize for coming into the stream late and when Jerry Nadler was speaking, because Jim Jordan Jim Jordan was speaking right before him, and I was trying to get on when Jim Jordan was still speaking. So I apologize for beginning with Jerry Nadler. We'll just be streaming this little hearing today where Attorney General Merrick Garland is to speak on federal government oversight. It's oversight, but I was about to say overreach. I don't mean to be redundant. So thank you everybody for being here. Let's see. Go ahead and give me a 5x5 if you can hear me. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Everybody over on Rumble, everybody over on Pilled and Foxhole, feel free to like, comment, and share this out. Thank you so much.
At least attempt to work with the Attorney General in good faith. Sadly, on the other side of the aisle, reason and good faith seem to be in short supply. In any event, Mr. Attorney General, I thank you for your testimony and thank you in advance for your patience. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back without objection. All other opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. The Honorable Merrick Garland is the Attorney General of the United States. He was sworn in on March
I wish
11,
they didn't have to call him
2021.
honorable.
We welcome
I don't
our
think we're
witness.
in
Thank
agreement
him
there.
for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record show that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you. You can be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. You know how this is done, Mr. Garland. You've been here before. We want to again thank you for being here. You're welcome to give your opening statement.
I'm sorry, is this working? Yeah,
You got it.
thank you. Good morning, Chairman Jordan.
That's
Ranking
what
Member
we're asking.
Nadler,
We're
distinguished
tapping
members
on the
of this
government
committee.
like, is this
Thank you for the
working?
opportunity to appear before you on behalf of the more than 115,000 employees of the Department of Justice. Since the Justice Department was founded, it has been tasked with confronting some of the most challenging issues before the country. Today, we are handling
And
matters
you've
of
dropped the ball on
significant public
those
interest
and have
that
been wasting a
carry
lot of time
great
and money on other
consequences
things.
for our democracy. A lot has been said about the Justice Department, about who we are and what we are doing, about
said
what
what
our
I
job
said.
is and what it is not, and about why we do this work. I want to provide some clarity. First, who we are. The Justice Department is made up of more than 115,000 men and women who work in every state and communities across the country and around the globe. They are FBI, DEA, ATF agents, and United States Marshals who risk their lives to serve their communities. They are prosecutors and staff who work tirelessly to enforce our
I want
laws.
to go ahead and thank everybody
The
for being here.
overwhelming
Please,
majority
share
are
this out.
career
Feel free to
public
comment.
servants, meaning that they were not
Chat going on
appointed
over on
by the
Rumble
president
and
of
over on
any
Pilled
party.
and Foxhole.
Second, I want to provide clarity about what the job of the Justice Department is and about what it is not.
Oh, good. He's going
Our
to provide
job
clarity
is to
today.
help keep our country safe. That includes working closely with local police departments and communities across the country to combat violent crime. In fact, today we are announcing the results of a recent U.S. Marshals operation conducted with state and local law enforcement.
But then why didn't you
That
serve the
operation
warrants for
targeted
January
violent
6th
fugitives
prisoners to the
and
sheriffs?
resulted in 4,400 arrests across 20 cities in just 3 months. Our work also includes combating the drug cartels that are poisoning Americans. Last Friday, we extradited Ovidio Guzman Lopez, a leader of the Sinaloa cartel, from Mexico to the United States. He is a son of El Chapo and one of more than a dozen cartel members we have indicted and extradited to the United States. Our job includes seeking justice for the survivors of child exploitation, human smuggling, and sex trafficking. And it includes protecting democratic institutions like this one by holding accountable all those criminally responsible for the January 6th
Do you see how
attack
he's
on the
telling
Capitol.
a little bit of truth
Our job
with
is
a lot of
also to
lies?
protect civil rights.
Definitely
That
protecting
includes
Democrat
protecting our freedoms
institutions.
as Americans to worship and think as we please, and to peacefully express
Wow,
our
that green
opinions,
blazer was
our beliefs, and our
nice.
ideas. It includes protecting the right of every eligible citizen to vote and to have that vote counted. It includes combating discrimination, defending reproductive rights
mention-
under law, and deterring
He didn't
and
mention securing it
prosecuting
from undue votes, did he?
attacks
No, he did not.
such as hate crimes. And our job is to uphold the rule of law. That means we apply the same laws to everyone. There is not one set of laws for the powerful and another for the powerless, one for the rich and another for the poor, one for Democrats and another for Republicans, or different rules depending upon one's race or ethnicity or religion. Our job is to pursue justice without fear or favor. Our job is not to do
So when
what
are you
is
going to
politically
start?
convenient.
I just wonder
Our
when they're going to
job is not
start,
to
you
take
know?
orders from the president, from Congress, or from anyone else about who or what to criminally investigate. As the
No,
president
actually,
himself has said, and I reaffirm today,
sometimes you
I
should,
am
though.
not the president's lawyer. I will add, I am not Congress's prosecutor. The Justice Department works for the American people. Our job is to follow the facts and the law.
No, but they were
That
created
is
and
what we
funded
do.
by Congress,
All of us
who were elected by the
recognize
people. That's
that with
actually
this
how
work
it
comes
works.
public scrutiny, criticism, and legitimate oversight. These are appropriate and important given the matters
Merrick Garland
and
is
the
a
gravity
snake.
of the matters that are before the department. But singling out individual career public servants who are just doing their jobs is dangerous, particularly at a time of increased threats to the safety of public servants and their families.
Well, we disagree because
We will not be intimidated.
when they're
We
Nazis,
will
you got to
do
say
our
something.
jobs free from outside
stop them.
influence, and we will not back down from defending our democracy. Third, I want to explain why we approach our job in this way.
You should be
Justice
defending the
Department
Republic.
was founded in the wake of the Civil War and in the midst of Reconstruction with the first principal task of bringing to justice white supremacists and others who terrorize Black Americans to prevent them from exercising their civil rights. The Justice Department's job then and now is to fulfill the promise that it is at the foundation of our democracy, that the law will treat each of us alike. That promise is also why I am here. My family fled religious persecution in Eastern Europe at the start of the 20th century. My grandmother, who was one of 5 children, born in what is now Belarus, made it to the United States, as did 2 of her siblings. The other 2 did not. Those 2 were killed in the Holocaust. And there is little doubt that but for America, the same thing would have happened to my grandmother. But this country took her in and under the protection of our laws. She
And
was
this is
able
how
to
you
live
repay
without
us,
fear of
Garland,
persecution.
for our
That protection
generosity.
is what distinguishes this country from so many others. The protection of law, the rule of law, is the foundation of our system of government. Repaying this country for the debt my family owes, for our very lives, has been the focus of my entire professional career.
A poor way to
That is
show
why
your
I served in
gratitude.
the Justice Department under 5 different attorneys general under both Democratic and Republican administrations. That is why I spent more than 25 years ensuring the rule of law as a judge. And that is why I left a lifetime appointment as a judge and came back to the Justice Department 2.5 years ago. And that is why I'm here today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. And you were right. America is the greatest country ever. And we on this side, I know, are very concerned about the equal application of the law that you talked about in your opening statement. With that, we'll move to 5-minute questions, and we will start with the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, the rule of law does distinguish our country, but you have not upheld that. You have allowed the rule of law to erode. And that's why 65% of the people in this country have no faith in the Department of Justice under your leadership. They don't trust it. They don't trust you. The reason is because they're witnessing every day a politicized Justice Department in a 2-tiered system of justice. For example, they see the DOJ, of course, aggressively prosecuting President Biden's chief political rival, Mr. Trump, while at the same time, they see slow walking and special treatment given to the president's son. That's just a fact that everybody can see with their own 2 eyes. I want to focus on that investigation of the Biden family. We have many important questions for you today about that. Let me just get right to the chase. Has anyone from the White House provided direction at any time to you personally or to any senior officials at the DOJ regarding how the Hunter Biden investigation was to be carried out?
No.
Have you had personal contact with anyone at FBI headquarters about the Hunter Biden investigation?
I don't recollect the answer to that question, but the FBI works for the Justice Department. It's,
Oh, I
I'm
think
sorry.
you
I'm
know
sorry.
the
You
answer
don't
to that
recollect. You don't
question.
recollect whether you've talked with anybody at FBI headquarters about an investigation of the president's son?
I don't believe that I did. I promised the Senate when I came before it for confirmation that I would leave Mr. Weiss in place and that I would not interfere with his investigation.
Really?
Okay, did you ever,
I have kept that promise.
all right, have you had personal contact with anybody at the Baltimore field office on the Hunter Biden matter?
No.
On July 10th, 2023, U.S. Attorney David Weiss told Senator Lindsey Graham, quote, I had discussions with departmental officials regarding potential appointment under 28 U.S.C. Section 515, which would have allowed me to file charges in a district outside my own without the partnership of the local U.S. attorney, end quote. With whom did Mr. Weiss have those discussions?
I'm not going to get into the internal deliberations of the department.
Oh, but you must, sir. This is important
Oh,
for us. We
yeah,
have
I think
oversight
probably
responsibility over your
you
department,
will
and we
be
need
getting
these
into
answers.
that.
It's appropriate and necessary for Mr. Weiss to have
We'll be getting into that
conversations with the
today.
department.
Yes,
I
we
made
will.
clear that if he wanted to bring a case in any jurisdiction, he would be able to do that. The way you do that is to get an order signed by the Attorney General called a 515 order. I promised he would be able to do that, and he in his letters made clear he understood he would be able to do that.
Okay. Can you tell us about any briefings or discussions that you personally have had with Mr. Weiss regarding any and all federal investigations of Hunter Biden?
I'm going to say again, I promised the Senate that I would not interfere with Mr. Weiss.
So you have not, I'm just under oath today, your testimony is you have not had any discussions with Mr. Weiss about this matter?
Under oath, my testimony today is that I promised the Senate I would not intrude in his investigation. I do not intend to discuss the internal Justice Department deliberations, whether or not I had them.
Oh, okay. So your testimony today is you're not going to tell us whether you've had
Wow.
discussions with Mr. Weiss.
My testimony today is I told the committee that I would not interfere. I made clear that Mr. Weiss would have the authority to bring cases that he thought were appropriate.
Okay.
Mr. Weiss's
All right.
letter.
Okay, let me stop.
makes
For a second
clear-
time, sir, are you aware that FBI officials have come before this committee and they have stated that there was a cumbersome bureaucratic process that Mr. Weiss had to go through to bring charges in another judicial district? You know that?
I'm not aware, but that's not true. There's nothing cumbersome
Wait.
about the process.
So those
All I
whistleblowers
need
are
to-
lying to us under oath? Those whistleblowers are lying?
He
that
just
you're
Say
tried
that.
to testify
Their
that his
description of
opinion
the
is a lie.
question. All I have to do is
Okay,
sign a
all right,
section.
let me get to the fact. Mr. Weiss has been the lead prosecutor on the Hunter Biden case since 2018, correct?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Weiss has been the lead prosecutor on the Hunter Biden case since 2018. Now, here's the question.
He's been the lead prosecutor since he was appointed by President Trump.
Okay,
And
why,
I-
let me ask you,
Okay,
why
but he didn't
has
ask
the
for that
Justice Department
elaboration. He's
dragged this
confirming it.
investigation out for so long? Does it really take years to determine if Hunter Biden lied on a federal form related to purchasing a firearm?
Mr. Weiss
It doesn't
was
take
a
years when it's a
longtime
normal
career
person.
prosecutor. President Trump appointed him as
You're
United
not
Guys, if
answering
you
the
or I
question.
did that, it
Is
wouldn't
that
take them
standard
years.
procedure? Should it take that long to
Good
make
morning,
such a
Rob
simple
Maga. How
determination?
are you?
I'm answering the question.
Mhm.
Give me an opportunity to
And
do
good
so.
morning.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, everybody.
He was charged
Everybody over on
with that
Fox on Hill, good
investigation under the
morning.
previous
Thank you guys for being
administration.
here.
He's continued. He knows how to conduct investigations, and I have not intruded or attempted to evaluate that because that was the promise I made to
Really?
the Senate.
The
Really?
whistleblowers gave us testimony about
He
serious
wasn't even gonna look
misconduct at the
into that?
Justice Department in regards to the preferential treatment afforded Hunter Biden. Has your office requested an investigation into that?
There are well-known processes for how whistleblowers make their claims. I am a strong proponent of whistleblowers and a strong defender. We have an Inspector General's office. We have an Office of Professional Responsibility. That is the way in which complaints from whistleblowers should be and are appropriately handled.
I'm out of time. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Nadler. Hey, Dan.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney General, thank you for being here today. It's no secret that some of my colleagues across the aisle have threatened to shut down the government
I want to go ahead
unless and
and
until the
apologize
FBI
on
and the
behalf
Department of
of
Justice are defunded.
on
One
behalf of
Trump-like
America for
presidential
anybody who
candidate
may
has
be
said that we
watching
should
this
abolish the
that's not
FBI
from
altogether.
America.
Mr. Attorney General, what would be the impact on
Jerry
America of
Nadler is
defunding the
gross.
FBI?
Yeah, what would happen if we defunded
Funding
the
the
FBI?
FBI would leave the United States naked to the malign influence of the Chinese Communist Party, to the attacks by Iranians on American citizens and attempts to assassinate former officials, to the Russian aggression, to North Korean cyber attacks, to violent crime in the United States, which the FBI helps to fight against, to all kinds of espionage, to domestic violent extremists
All kinds,
who
guys.
have attacked
All kinds
our
of espionage.
churches, our
They won't be
synagogues,
able to do
our
that anymore.
mosques, and who have killed individuals out
So
of racial
there's
hatred.
truth inside
I-
his
I- I
lies.
just
So listen very
I
calmly. I'm
cannot
gonna try to keep my
imagine the
voice low
consequences of defunding the FBI,
because I
but
have
they
a
would
loud
be
voice.
catastrophic.
Thank you. I want to turn to Mr. Weiss's
He says
investigation.
catastrophic. If we
The
defund
authority
the
he's been
FBI, it'd be
granted to conduct that
catastrophic. They won't be able to
investigation without
spy on us and
interference
stop us
in
from killing
whatever
one
way he
another.
deems necessary. You testified to the Senate Judiciary Committee on March 1st of this year that David Weiss had, quote, full authority over any investigation concerning Hunter Biden. Was that a true statement at the time?
Yes, Mr. Weiss has full authority to conduct his investigation however he wishes, and Mr. Weiss has confirmed that in letters to this committee.
Thank you. This authority included ensuring that Weiss would be able to bring charges in jurisdiction outside of Delaware if necessary. Is that correct?
I assured Mr. Weiss publicly that he would have the authority to bring a case outside of Delaware if he thought that was appropriate.
Does that remain true today?
Yes, that is true today.
Has it ever been the case over the course of this investigation that Mr. Weiss would not have been able to bring charges outside of Delaware if warranted?
As a matter of my authority, I promised he would be able to do that. I think as apparent in the letters exchanged with the committee and in my previous testimony, in order for a United States attorney or a special counsel or anyone else to bring a case outside of his jurisdiction, it requires me to sign a paper called Section 515. That's the statute which permits bringing cases outside of the jurisdiction. I promised that I would do whatever was required to enable Mr. Weiss to bring a case outside his jurisdiction if that's what he thought was appropriate.
And I assume it was your understanding that Mr. Weiss was fully aware that he could bring charges outside of Delaware if necessary when you testified on March 1st.
Mr. Weiss has said so in the letters he sent to this committee.
Thank you. Did he ever say or do anything? Did he ever say or do anything that might make him unsure of where he could bring charges?
Mr. Weiss's own letters reflect that he had never asked me to be special counsel and that he understood the process for asking for a signature on a Section 515 form.
There have been accusations that the handling of the Hunter Biden matter is an example of a two-tiered system of justice. What's your response to that allegation?
The Justice Department treats everyone alike, regardless of party, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of wealth. Everyone that people may not understand why particular investigations are conducted in particular ways until all the facts come out. That's what we have a court for. And all of the explanations will come out with respect to Mr. Weiss, for example, at the end of his period as special counsel. One of the requirements is that he file a report, which I have promised to make public to the extent that's lawful and consistent with department policy. He will explain his decisions to prosecute and not to prosecute.
Thank you. What are the impacts of members of Congress making such accusations against the DOJ? Do baseless accusations from government officials make it more difficult for investigators to do their job and effectively investigate the subject?
No,
Members
they
of
do
the
not. In
Justice
fact,
Department are
go ahead and say
strong,
free speech makes it hard for you to
and
do your
tough,
job.
and able
Go ahead and
understand
say
that
it,
their job
Garland.
is to do the
Go
right
ahead.
thing, regardless of any pressures from
Sorry,
any
guys. I need
order.
to calm down.
What is dangerous, and I'm not talking about the committee, but what is dangerous is when anyone singles out a career prosecutor or a career FBI agent, and we know as a matter of fact that that kind of singling out has led to threats. This is a concern across the board. It is not a concern about anyone in particular.
I think you would have been justified in referring to the committee. My time has expired. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Attorney General, you're the only person who could ensure that Mr. Weiss had all the necessary authority, aren't you?
I'm the only person who can sign an agreement with respect to special counsel. The authority to do Section 515 can be signed by other people in the department.
You're aware, ultimately, though, the authority is yours.
Yes.
You made the point that you don't take orders from the president about such things. You decide ultimately what the Justice Department will do.
I announced at the beginning, I promised that he would be able to bring whatever cases he wants. and I have followed through on that promise. I'm permitted to make that kind of promise, and I have made it.
Did you undertake to inform yourself, to interact
he's
with him
admitting being
sufficient to
partisan. He's
ensure that he
admitting that he's
knew
partisan in
he
his position.
possessed that authority, or that you would see to
He
it that
made
he had all
promises.
necessary
He's
I
being
don't
authority?
think there's any doubt that he knew. He has written 3 letters to this committee indicating that he understood he had that authority.
You're also aware, though, aren't you, sir, that a senior IRS investigator, whistleblower, came forward and has testified publicly that Mr. Weiss stated that he did not have such authority. He was not the decider. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of the testimony. I was not present at any point during that statement. And
Have
Mr.
you
Weiss Mr. Weiss, who was present, has indicated that he had the authority and he knew that he had it.
Subsequent to those developments, though, you decided to make Mr. Weiss special counsel, which you had not done before.
Mr. Weiss made clear he did not ask me to be special counsel until last month. And last month, I made him special counsel.
Did you have some lack of information that you should have had that would have caused you to act earlier to make him special counsel?
Mr. Weiss did not ask to be special counsel before.
I understand he didn't ask. You've said that, sir. Did you take the necessary steps to inform yourself what authority he understood he had or what obstacles he was encountering?
Look, Mr. Weiss had, as I said from the beginning, at the very beginning, that he had authority over all matters that pertain to Hunter Biden.
Have you learned that he was in fact deterred by decisions of the United States attorneys in the District of Columbia and the Northern District of California from proceeding as he thought best?
With respect, Congressman, Mr. Weiss has not said that he was deterred. He said that he followed the normal processes of the department, and that he was never denied the ability to bring a case in another jurisdiction.
Well, what changed then, Mr. Attorney General? What made you decide that it was sufficient to leave him in the situation he was until you decided to make him special counsel?
Mr. Weiss asked for that authority, given the extraordinary circumstances of this matter, and given my promise that I would give him any resources he requested, I made him special counsel.
So until that time, was it just a matter of his predilection, or did you undertake to investigate and discern what he was doing with his authority and whether he had faced any obstacles?
I did not endeavor to investigate because I had promised that I would not interfere with this investigation. The way
Wow.
to not interfere is to not investigate an investigation.
Once he requested to be named special counsel, having not done so over months and months of your tenure, did you ask him what had changed that made him now need to be a special counsel?
Mr. Weiss asked to be made special counsel. I had promised that I would give him all the resources he needed, and I made him special counsel.
To take down
When did the
Trump.
Justice Department permit statutes of limitations
Anybody
to
who supports
expire
Trump.
on some of the prospective charges against Hunter Biden for tax violations?
I don't know anything about the statute of limitations here. The investigation was in the hands of Mr. Weiss to make the determinations that he thought were appropriate.
Are you unaware that statutes of limitations have in fact been allowed to expire after there having been tolling agreements in place?
I'm going to say again, determination of where to bring cases and which kinds of cases to bring was left to Mr. Weiss.
Yes, sir. I understand that you've said that. That's part of the problem. The question is, are you aware that statutes of limitations have been allowed to expire while the matter was under investigation?
The investigators were fully familiar with all the relevant law.
I'm not asking for the excuses.
Oh
I'm
my
asking whether
gosh.
you're aware of that fact, sir.
I'm going to say again. I'm going to say again and again if necessary.
No,
I did
because if
not
he's aware of that
interfere
fact,
with,
he is
did not
derelict in his
investigate,
duties.
did not
See,
make
those
He
are
needs to step down.
determinations.
statements in response to other questions.
Those-
Everybody in the country now knows who's paying attention to this, that the Justice Department permitted statutes of limitations to expire.
Mhm.
Every lawyer who's ever practiced understands the implications of allowing statutes of limitations to expire. Do you
Prosecutors,
not even know as you sit here whether that occurred or not?
prosecutors
just won't
make
admit to it.
appropriate determinations on
You
their
wanna-
own.
you
In
wanna
this
admit
case,
to
I
it?
left
Oh.
it to Mr. Weiss whether to bring
He's throwing
charges
Mr.
or
Weiss
not.
under the bus
That
at
would
this point.
include whether to let statute of limitations
that's
expire or not, whether there was sufficient evidence to bring a case that was subject to the statute of limitations or not, whether there were better cases to bring or not.
Time, gentleman, has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Thank you, Mr.
Roger.
Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General, for being here with us this morning. You know, as much as we see dirt being thrown in the air, there's a lot of
Well, that's rich coming from a Democrat.
misinformation that I think is intended to confuse people. I would like to ask unanimous consent to put into the record 3 letters from Mr. Weiss that he sent to Congress on June 7th, June 30th, and July 10th.
Without objection.
He said over and over again that he has full authority over this case, including the ability to seek special counsel or special attorney status if needed. You know, trying to imply otherwise is just simply false.
What?
Mr. Weiss was appointed
If
by
we
then
could, if we
President
could
Trump.
elect competent
Your decision was to leave the
Representative
Trump-appointed
California, if we can work on
attorney
that.
completely in charge of this, hands off from you. He makes all the calls without interference from the Attorney General. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so the idea that you would interfere is completely wrong. And I'd also like to ask, you talked about your independence from
Good morning, Rob
the
Maga. Good
president,
morning,
but also your
TXPC guy.
independence
Good,
from
over on the
the
Rumble
Congress.
chat. Over
Have
on
you
Pill. Good
ever
morning,
uh,
Duppy,
come across
Tam Grau,
historically
Just
an
One, Patriot
instance
Drummer.
where the Congress of the United States tried
Good
to
morning,
or
Dondo. How are
successfully
you?
interfered
Sleigh
with a
bells.
prosecution
Good morning. It's
initiated
been a
by
while.
the Department of Justice based on the facts and the law?
Thank everybody for being here. Give me a 5 by 5 if y'all
I
can.
want to be gentle
hear me.
about the word interfere, but it
Joe
is
Lofgren, Zoe
just as a
Lofgren.
historical
Zoe.
example in the case of
Her
Iran-Contra.
name is Zoe.
The
Patriot drummer.
consequences of actions by the
I know, she looks
Congress
like a Joe, doesn't
were
she?
that the special counsel's investigation
She
of
looks like she could be a Joe. But her name is supposed to be Zoe.
Mr. North were dismissed.
Correct. Before I go into another question I have, I just would like
Zoe
unanimous
Lofgren.
consent to put into the record the annual statistical transparency report dated April of 2023. It indicates that the deduplicated counting method for FBI queries of U.S. persons under the Section 702
That's weird.
database
A
numbered
Democrat can't
over
even say queries right.
119,000. I would just like to note, and we will work with you.
I guess
This
she didn't want to
committee on
accidentally
a
start a
bipartisan
brush fire.
basis is very concerned about
Queries.
querying of the 702 database for U.S. persons without a warrant. We're not suggesting that the law does not permit that, but we are going to visit this
I
issue
don't think the
because
law
it is
does
my
permit
view
searches without a warrant.
that querying the 702 database that has been collected without due process, because it relates to foreign individuals, is completely wrong in terms of the privacy rights of Americans. And I'm hoping that we can work successfully with you as we craft requirements for a warrant to do that querying. I'd like to ask,
That's really
as we
strange.
know, and
I want to
has
see
been
the warrants
mentioned
for
by the
Nate
ranking
Paul's
member,
residences.
the
I want to see the
proposal is
wet ink
basically to
copies of the
defund the
warrants for Nate
police
Paul's
by
residences.
the Republicans, to defund the FBI. I am concerned that if we defund the police, as the majority has suggested,
Oh
that
my
really doesn't
gosh.
have an impact on the statute of limitations. So if we were to
You can't take these clowns
defund
seriously.
the
Look,
Department
first
of
of all, she's dressed
Justice,
like Ronald McDonald.
defund the FBI and the police, as has been
Now she's
suggested,
clowning around.
what would happen with the statute of limitations for cases that you were pursuing if you were not able to actually do
You
that?
see
Would
the
they be
projection? They'll just
suspended
blatantly
anyway, or
lie.
would
They'll just
the
blatantly lie and
criminals
say,
get
oh,
off scot-free?
now the Republicans, I
Well,
can't
I
believe
know
the
in my
Republicans
experience
are
as a
suggesting,
judge, if I was asked
suggesting we
a legal
defund
question
the
and I don't
FBI.
know the answer, I would go back
Now
to
the
the office and
Republicans want to
study it, and
defund
I'll
the
have to do
police.
that in this case. I don't have the answer.
Well,
How rich is
I
that,
think
guys?
I do, because there's nothing in the statute that allows for the statute of limitations to be suspended because the government has been shut down or because the police have been defunded through the budget process. And I just think we ought to take the implications of a shutdown very seriously in terms of allowing criminals to get off. And I see that my time has expired, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair does not recognize himself. Quote, Mr. Weiss has full authority to bring cases in other jurisdictions if he feels it's necessary. That was your response, Attorney General, to Senator Grassley's question on March 1st, 2023. You just referenced it when Mr. Bishop was questioning you. Only problem is he'd already been turned down by the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia, Mr. Graves. So he didn't have full authority, did he?
I had an extended conversation with Senator Grassley at the time. We briefly touched on the Section 515 question and how that process went. I've never been
My
suggested.
point's real simple, Mr. Garland. You said he had complete authority, but he'd already been turned down. He wanted to bring an action in the District of Columbia, and the U.S. Attorney there said, no, you can't. And then you go tell the United States Senate under oath that he has complete authority.
I'm going to say again that no one had the authority to turn him down. They could refuse to partner with him. They could
You
not.
can use whatever language. Refuse to partner is turning down.
Well, it's not the same under a well-known Justice Department practice.
Here's why the statute of limitations question is important, and Mr. Bishop was getting at just a few minutes ago. Here's why it's important. You let the statute of limitations lapse for 2014, 2015. Those were the years with the felony tax charges where Hunter Biden was getting income from Burisma. Here are 4 facts that I think are so important. Hunter Biden was put on the board of Burisma, made a lot of money, got paid a lot of money over those years, a couple $1 million. He wasn't qualified. Fact number 2, he wasn't qualified to be on the board of Burisma. Not my words, his words. He said he got on the board because of his last name. The brand, as Devin Archer said when he was under oath and we deposed him. Fact number 3, Burisma executives told Hunter Biden, we're under pressure, we need help. Fact number 4, Joe Biden goes to Ukraine, leverages our tax money, American people's tax money, to get the prosecutor fired who was applying the pressure. Interestingly enough, that fact is entirely consistent with what the confidential human source told the FBI, and they recorded in the 1023 form, the same form Mr. Wray didn't want to let this committee and the Congress see. That all happened. That all happened. What I'm wondering is why you guys let the statute of limitations lapse for those tax years that dealt with Burisma income.
Oh, yeah.
There's one more fact that's important, and that is that this investigation was being conducted by Mr. Weiss, an appointee of President Trump. You will, at the appropriate time, have the opportunity to ask Mr. Weiss that question, and he will no doubt address it.
I think that it's really rude that for Merrick Garland to tell the House that at when it's the appropriate time, you can ask him.
They just like, oh, darn, we let it. Were they careless?
I expect that won't be what he says, but because I
You
promise.
know that's not the case, because as Mr. Bishop pointed out, they had a tolling agreement. They talked to Hunter Biden's defense counsel and say, let's extend the statute of limitations. And then at some point, they made an intentional decision to say, we're going to let the statute of limitations lapse. And I want to know who decided that and why they did it.
Go on, say it
Mr.
was.
Weiss was a supervisor of the
Mr. Weiss,
investigation
okay.
at that time and at all times. He made the appropriate decisions, and you'll be able to ask him that question, and he will.
You know why they did it? Everyone knows why they did it.
Just say why.
May not say it, but everyone knows why they did it. They did those tax years. That dealt with that involved the president. It's one thing to have a gun charge in Delaware. That doesn't involve the president of the United States. But Burisma, oh my, that goes right to the White House.
That's why
we can't have that. And we can slow walk this thing along. We can even extend the statute of limitations, and then we can intentionally let it lapse. And we know this investigation was slow. Here's what everyone said. Shapley said, DOJ slow walked the investigation. Ziegler, slow walking in the approvals of everything. This happened at the Delaware's attorney's office and DOJ tax level. Mr. Sobocinski, the FBI agent, said, I would have liked to see things move faster. Ms. Holly said the same. Every witness we've talked to said this thing was slow walked, and we know why. They slow walked it long enough to let the statute of limitations run so they wouldn't have to get into Burisma. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Will the gentleman yield?
No, I'm asking Mr. Garland the
I
question.
think I've tried to make clear that I don't know the specifics of the investigation. Much of what you are describing
That was who
occurred
I thought it was. You could
during the
have yelled
Trump
for him.
administration, during a Justice Department
yelled for him.
appointed by President Trump.
No, it didn't. This is 4.5 years of this investigation. We're talking about the last few years. Your statement was just this year, March 1st, to Senator Grassley.
No, I'm sorry. I was trying to respond to your descriptions of what the IRS agents said about certain
Statute of
things.
limitations is 6 years. That lapsed here in the Biden administration.
On the statute of limitations, we'll say again that the explanation for why the statute of limitation was lapsed, if it was, has to come from Mr. Weiss.
My time is this, but let me ask one last question real quick here. Who decided that David Weiss would stay on as U.S. attorney?
This had occurred before I came. Mr. Weiss had been kept on. I promised the.
No, I didn't say, you can walk all through that. I said, who decided? The White House decided.
Mr. Weiss.
Right? They serve at the pleasure of the president, right?
Mr. Weiss was.
Joe Biden decided to keep David Weiss as U.S. attorney. You weren't sworn in until March. He was told he was going to stay on in February. Pretty fundamental question. Who decided David Weiss was going to stay as U.S. attorney in Delaware?
Mr. Weiss.
your time has expired.
Chairman, your time has expired.
I'm waiting for an answer, and then I'll yield.
Well, then you asked the question after your time had expired already. Point of order.
Gentleman can respond, then I'll go to Ms. Jackson Lee.
Mr. Weiss was the special U.S. attorney from the District of Delaware when I came on. He had been appointed by President Trump. I promised that he would be permitted to stay on for this investigation, and that is what happened.
Gentleman from
Mr.
Texas, the
Chairman.
record.
So we see that for all of
Gentleman
the,
from, New York Circuit.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you
Lapsed.
misquoted
one moment.
from the transcript of the Senate hearing. I therefore ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the entire transcript of the Senate hearing.
Without objection, but I didn't
Thank you.
misquote what Mr. Garland said. Ms. Jackson Lee from Texas,
We see
recognized for 5 minutes.
Attorney
Thank you,
General
Mr. Chairman.
Garland throwing
None of the
Mr. Weiss under the bus completely.
Republicans'
He doesn't
goals
want to be
today
blamed for anything.
include
And he's saying
solving
Trump appointed him,
Americans'
so this is all good.
problems of which they are
Which-
concerned of.
It's silly.
There are many reasons, Mr. Attorney General, that
Oh
prosecutors
Lord, now we have
decline
Ms.
to bring
Jackson Lee.
charges. One of those reasons is that they
Guys, we don't.
don't
I'm
have
from the
any
DFW
evidence for
Metroplex.
conviction.
She's not
That
our
is
representative.
the
Okay,
justice way.
she's from
That is
Texas, but she's
just
not
in
our
America.
representative.
So let me raise these questions and concerns with you today. As we all know, Republicans have repeatedly alleged that the DOJ and FBI are conspiring to shield the Biden family from public criticism and giving Hunter Biden special treatment in its investigations. They have
Absolutely.
demonized law enforcement officials working with this case at every turn, which has
Yes.
directly led to increased threats against FBI officials, law
Mm.
enforcement, of which they pretend to support. I want to place into the record two
Really?
excerpts from recent transcribed interviews, and I would ask that
I
copies be
remember
made
the
available
Democrats
to
being
you.
the ones that were
The first
threatening
is
the
from
cops.
a June interview with Jennifer Moore, FBI's former executive assistant director for human resources. She told this committee that FBI had received so many threats that it had to stand up an entire 10-person unit just to deal with them. She said it is unprecedented. It's a number we have never had before.
I bet they didn't
testimony
though. I bet
pages
they just did
202
that
to
to say that
203.
they had to do
The
that.
second excerpt is from an
Like when the
interview
nurses
earlier
were
this month
dancing on
with
TikTok. They didn't
Thomas
have to do that.
Sobocinski, the special agent in charge of FBI's Baltimore field office. Here's what he said. I joined the FBI 25 years ago. I joined for a reason, to protect the American people, uphold the Constitution. I've been to war. My family's been in bad places. My kids have been evacuated from war zones or quasi-war zones. I've been in some bad things. I have accepted that. I'm solely focused on two things, and they're not mutually exclusive. The first is, like every investigation, I want to get to a resolution in a fair, apolitical way. The second thing, it's becoming more important and more relevant, is keeping my folks safe. And that part, I've never expected to have to be able to be concerned about keeping families safe. So that, for me, this is becoming more and more
Follow the
of a job that
Constitution
I have
and
to
you won't
do
have
and
so
take
many
away
issues,
from what
you know?
I was assigned or signed up to do, which was to investigate and do these things. So when you talk about
Do
potential
what things
frustration
did you sign
with
up to
communication,
violate the
I
Constitution?
am personally frustrated with anything that places my employees and their families in enhanced danger. Our children, their children did not sign up for this. Mr. Attorney General, do
elites,
you
you
agree that
mean?
politically charged rhetoric claiming that law enforcement agents, and I have many questions if you could
Do these
be
FBI
brief,
agents
are
start to
corrupt
believe that they're
and
above
contribute to
everybody
this
else? They're above
onslaught
the
of
American
threats
people whose
against
rights
public
they are
servants?
abusing?
Okay,
What-
as I
what's gotten
said
into
in
their
my opening
heads?
statement, We have had an
Let's hear what he has to
astounding
say.
number of threats against public servants over the last several years. I think that when career public servants in the Justice Department and in election workers and airline crews, when they are singled out, this can lead to threats of violence and actual violence.
Thank
We
you.
have the actual example of an attack on an FBI office by somebody who was incensed by political rhetoric. This does happen. We must not allow that to happen in this country.
Does the rhetoric regarding the Biden case have any basis in reality?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
Does the rhetoric regarding the Biden case have any basis in reality?
No, it does not.
How does this impact FBI and DOJ employees' ability to do their work? I think you meant specifically
Wait a
FBI and
second.
DOJ employees.
What?
As I've already said, the agents of the FBI and the
He can answer
prosecutors
that question just black and white. No, none of
understand
it's
that
real.
criticism comes with their job.
This guy's disgusting.
And they
Absolutely
will
disgusting. He
continue
needs
to
to
do
go.
their
He needs to
jobs
go right now.
without fear or favor. But the idea of threatening their safety or that of their families is just abhorrent.
Thank you. And I assume that provisions have had to be in place to protect these agents and their families.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
I assume that provisions or protections have had to be in place to protect these agents and their families.
Yes, that's correct.
Let me move on. Thank you very much, General. Let me move on to the fentanyl crisis, and I want to introduce HR 4272. But let me just put on the record so that you can probably summarize, and I ask for the indulgence of my chair, but in any event, that the FBI, the DOJ are focused, needlepoint focused, if you will, on the crisis of fentanyl. I want to just raise that for you, and then I just want to follow up with one or two other questions, if you would be able to comment on these collectively. I am dealing with the crisis of human trafficking and the prioritizing of America's children. They are under siege. And the level of child sexual abuse materials generating into human trafficking, and I want to put HR 30 on the record, indicates from ICAC that there are 99,000 IP cases where they're enticing children, and maybe only 1% of them being investigated. I'd like your comment on that. And finally, in the approach of
Oh,
high,
snap. She actually asked a good question, you guys.
of
Sheila
Yom Kippur
Jackson Lee from Texas.
to
Maybe
emphasize the
maybe
work
she is our
that is hopefully
representative.
still being doing with
Good. That was
anti-Semitism,
a good question.
attacks on immigrants and African Americans and Latinos. If you would answer those questions, fentanyl, the human trafficking, and then domestic terrorism.
These
Yeah,
are
let's
all
go.
horrendous problems propagated by people who are truly evil. We are fighting the fentanyl scourge in every possible way, starting with the precursors in China to the labs in Mexico to the cartels that are bringing the
She's
drugs
serious,
into the
guys.
United States,
Even the
to the
Democrats in
networks in the
Texas are
United
pissed off. Her
States,
constituents
to the
went to her.
streets
She's
of
doing this for
America.
her,
And we will
for her
continue to do
constituents
that
right now.
with every resource
She's
that
actually
Congress
working for the
gives
people
us.
right now.
Human smuggling and sex trafficking are obviously abhorrent. The Justice Department has task forces on both of these subjects and have brought many, many cases on these subjects. The idea of putting sexually explicit material about children on the web is another area that we are continuing to investigate and to prosecute and to ask the social media to take down from their sites.
She said
Gentlelady's time
1%.
has
Less
expired.
than
The gentleman before
1%
is
was being
recognized 5 minutes.
investigated.
I guess I'm just
She
wondering,
asked you
Mr.
about
Attorney
1%.
General, has anyone at the department told President Biden to knock it off with Hunter? I mean, you guys are charging Hunter Biden on some crimes, investigating him on others. You've got the president bringing Hunter Biden around to state dinners.
Of course
Has
they
anyone
haven't told him
knock it
to
off?
knock it off.
Our job in the Justice Department is to pursue our cases without reference to what's happening in the outside world.
Just yes or no? Have you
And
done
that
that?
is what we
So
do.
it's a no?
No one that I know of has spoken to the White House about the Hunter Biden case.
I'm
and
wondering
of
then,
course not.
okay, I got it. So
Yep.
Hunter Biden is selling art
I believe that.
to pay for his $15,000 a month rent in Malibu. How can you guarantee that the people buying that art aren't doing so to gain favor with the president?
Job of the Justice Department is to investigate criminal allegations. You have
Are you
information.
investigating this?
I don't
mean,
think
someone
that
who
was
bought
the, I
Hunter
mean,
Biden's
there's,
art
there are,
ended
that's
up
not the
with a
greatest question
prestigious
to ask,
appointment to a federal position.
Matt Gates.
Doesn't
There
it
are
look
better
weird that
questions. I would ask a different one.
he's become this immediate success in the art world as his dad
I
is
don't like the
president of the United
feely,
States?
the
Isn't that
feely
odd?
questions.
I'm not
Doesn't
going
that
to
make you
comment
feel
about any
weird?
specific.
Not going to comment, not going to investigate. So
That's
Hunter
like last
Biden
resort
associate
stuff. We're
Devin
not there
Archer
yet.
told us that Hunter sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you confident he has stopped doing that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Hunter Biden associate Devin Archer told us that Hunter sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you confident he has stopped?
I'm going to say again that all these matters are within the purview of Mr. Weiss.
Well, he said he didn't
I have not
investigate.
interfered with them, and I
Yeah, but
do
if you
not.
But
are
he
confident
also
that
said that
stopped, you
he's
can
And I do
gonna,
not
probably
intend
tell
to
us.
interfere with
He
it.
had, I want to, so it was a lot of Chinese money that was working its way through these shell companies into the accounts of the Biden family. So the China initiative was set up during the Trump administration at the Department of Justice to go after the malign influence of the Chinese Communist Party. And the Biden Justice Department dissolved the China
I
initiative.
agree with you guys.
So I
Sheila
guess I'm wondering, does the
Jackson Lee is
department
crazy, but
have
those were some
any
good questions.
documents that would detail the basis for why you got rid of the China initiative that President Trump had set up?
The Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division gave a long speech which explained that. He has testified before Congress
See,
several
guys,
times.
it's
We'd be happy
everybody
to
else's
provide you with
What's the
responsibility,
basis?
and
Just
then
tell
it's
us all now.
nobody's
Why
responsibility.
was the China initiative
When you
dissolved?
spread
But,
accountability so thin,
what the Assistant Attorney General
you
said
know,
was
that
that
it's
we
nobody's fault
face
that these things are
attacks
happening.
from
Absolutely not.
4 nation states: North
The
Korea,
administrative state
China,
needs to end.
Russia, and Iran. And we need to focus our attention on the broad range of these attacks. Sometimes we don't
Wait a
know.
second. Are you saying that North Korea has the same malign influence risk to the United States as the Chinese Communist Party? Are you trying to represent there's some parity there? Because here's what it looks like. It looks like the Chinese gave all this
That
money
is a pretty
to the
funny
Bidens,
comparison.
and then you guys came in and got rid of the China initiative, and it was successful. Like I saw one rationale that you guys got rid of the China initiative because it was racial profiling. But one of the people you convicted was a guy named Charles Lieber, who was a Harvard professor taking $50,000 a month to do China's bidding and give them whatever research was being done. Are you aware of the millions of dollars that moved through Rob Walker's shell companies from Chinese Communist Party entities into Biden family bank accounts? Are you aware of that?
There were a lot of questions that you just asked. Let me start with the first one about North Korea. North Korea is a dangerous actor, both kinetically and with respect to cyber.
But not on par with China. I'm on the Armed Services
not in the
Committee, Mr.
business
Attorney
right
General.
now.
please,
It makes you look unserious to suggest
May I
that.
answer your question or not?
Answer the question
Yeah.
about whether or not you know about
Well,
all the
please do
millions of
answer.
dollars that
So
moved
you
through
don't
Rob
want me to
Walker.
answer about North Korea?
I already know the answer, and so does everyone.
It
They're
was
not
sort
the
of a
same risk as
rhetorical
China. So let's get
question.
on to serious questions and serious answers. Do you know about the money that moved through Rob Walker's shell companies?
Be
Yes or no?
serious,
As
man.
I've said repeatedly, I have left these matters to Mr. Weiss. I've not
Blissfully
intruded.
ignorant.
I've
He's not doing
Blissfully
anything at
ignorant.
all.
Tried
He's
to
saying,
find out what
So
I
he
you're
knows.
looking
promised
the
I
other way
wouldn't
on
look into that.
purpose
Who did you
because
promise
everybody
you
knows
wouldn't
this
look
stuff's
into that?
happening. And you know what? People don't pay bribes to not get something in return, right? The China initiative resulted in the convictions of a Harvard professor, of someone at Monsanto. So we were working against the Chinese. They paid the Bidens, and now you're sitting here telling me that North Korea is the big threat. I got to get to this one thing on January 6th. So did the FBI lose count of the number of paid informants on January 6th?
Let me answer your question about China.
I want you to
China
answer this
is the
question. I only get
most-
5 minutes. You've already sort of, I think,
you asked
screwed
me
the
a
pooch on
question,
China.
you
He has
So
5
January
minutes.
6th, did
Shut-
you lose count of the
shut
number
up,
of federal
Garland.
assets? Did you lose count and order an audit?
Gentleman's time has expired.
I get an answer to the question of did they lose count?
No,
of the
let him
number-
answer the question.
The time has expired. The Attorney General can respond.
China is the most aggressive, most dangerous adversary that
Attorney
the
General, I think
United
that-
States faces, and we are doing everything within our power to rebut that, to stop that, to prevent their invasions, both kinetic, and through cyberspace. And we will continue to
If
do
someone
that.
gave that answer in your courtroom when you were a judge, you would tell them they were being
Mr.
non-responsive
Chairman,
and you would direct them to answer the
Point
question.
of order, Your Honor.
Time is,
Badgering the witness.
Point
The
of
time
order,
has
please.
expired.
I got it. I was
You like Your
laughing.
Honor? You want to stick with that?
Yeah, I was getting
Okay.
laughed at to call me Your Honor.
Point of order either way.
Okay, I understand that too.
All right.
But The gentleman asked his question before his time
So he
expired.
promised he
The
wouldn't
Attorney
look
General did
into
not
it.
respond to the gentleman's question. I was hoping he would respond to the question
And I
about the
believe
confidential
that, but I
human
wonder who
sources
did he
on
promise
January
that, and
6th. He
why did
didn't
he
respond
promise
to
it?
that.
He didn't
I'm
want to
sure we're
look
going to
at
get,
any of the
we're going to
evidence
get an
that was
answer.
ever was
Of
official.
course,
Now-
Mr. Chairman,
now
there were
recognize
eight
the gentleman-
questions before that he was not given a chance to answer.
Understand,
So
but
the witness might have thought.
But the witness doesn't, Mr. Chairman, point of order. The
Understand,
witness
but I
does
don't
not
care.
control the time.
hang on, exactly right. Members control the time. If they want to switch their question and focus on one more question that they'd like an answer to, I want to give the witness a chance to respond to that final question that Mr. Gates asked. He didn't respond to it. Someone else is going to ask it, I'm sure. We now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'll just follow up a few of the questions were asked
Yeah,
here.
Attorney General
Did Devin
Garland doesn't get to get
Archer
up there and just
not
start
say
testifying everything.
Joe Biden did nothing
He's gonna
wrong?
answer the questions. He had his
Um,
opening statement.
Be clear, I only know about Mr. Archer from newspaper reports. I want to be clear that I kept my promise to not involve myself in this
Okay, then
investigation.
I'll state it. He said Joe Biden did nothing wrong. Secondly, did you say that President Trump appointed Weiss, who then you appointed?
Yes, President Trump appointed Mr. Weiss as United States Attorney.
So that should take care of that issue. And they say the department's been weaponized. Wasn't there an investigation of Mr. Gates and you didn't prosecute him?
Justice Department does not make comments about its
Well, it
investigation.
shows you we're not weaponized. If we were weaponized, we'd have done it. That was a beautiful exchange there, and it shows we didn't do that.
Wow.
You are the nation's
he
chief
almost
law
talked about that
enforcement officer, and I
investigation.
appreciate that. And law enforcement's one of our government's fundamental functions. Crime is growing too much in this country and in my city of Memphis as
Oh,
well.
look at these Democrats now.
We need law
Look at these
enforcement
Democrats.
effective,
I'm sorry,
swift,
guys.
and fair. I'd like to
try to stay a
focus
little
my
more
questions on what actually affects the American people. Crime.
That's right.
How do we get smarter law enforcement requiring smart resource
Hello, Rob
allocations?
Magga, TXPC
Not about
guy
funding
over
or
on
less
LinkedIn.
funding, but the right funding for the right programs, and see that happens. Memphis, as hiring has become more difficult, we've lowered our standards to get more officers. That's not the way
That's
to do it.
but that's what
The
Democrats
COPS program is
do.
helping us review the
That
policy
is
and
what
procedures, and I
Democrats
thank you, the COPS
do.
program, for doing
Okay.
that. But what can
Now he's admitted it on
Department
the
of
floor.
Justice do to help see that law enforcement is more efficient and more effective?
Appoint
So-
Republicans.
The key to this is our partnership, the FBI, DEA, Marshals, ATFs, partnership at every local level with local and state law enforcement, in task forces, in discussions to target the most dangerous criminals in those communities, but at the same time to engage the communities to help engender community trust in law enforcement. Everyone who's prosecuted violent crime cases, and that includes me, knows that you need the trust of the community in order to get witnesses. We and the Justice Department are helping our state and local colleagues do just that. The funding you described from the COPS office and in the Office of Justice Programs allows us to give money to state and local police organizations that are having trouble with recruitment and retention and promotion of law officers.
But that's
and,
how
helps
they're able
them,
to hire people that are
make their,
they're still the standards are still lower.
departments respectful
That's
of
the issue, is
constitutional
the lower
rights, and at the
standards.
same time effective in the investigation and prosecution of criminal law violations.
Thank you for those activities, those programs through COPS. You've also reinstituted patterns and practices investigations of certain police departments, and Memphis is one of them, and I thank you for doing that. Can you share with us how important those pilot programs are and how they can improve policing?
Yes, Congress has authorized the Justice Department to conduct pattern or practice investigations when they have a reasonable belief in that there has been a pattern of unconstitutional behavior in a police department. We are careful to select those cases where we think there is such a pattern. We make those investigations. We then work with the law enforcement agencies in the cities. Our hope is to come to a consent decree that will lead to a better, more efficient, and more constitutional police department. We have been successful in all of our cases to date in reaching consent agreements.
Thank you, sir. You were part of being announced bringing of charges, federal charges against the 5 officers who killed Tyree Nichols in Memphis, and I thank you for that. We need that federal charge, and we need our department looked at. If there's a
Ah,
shutdown of the federal government,
little
how will that
reminder
affect
that
the
it's the
Department of
Democrats who
Justice and
demonize
affect
law
policing in
enforcement.
local communities?
For anything that
I
they
haven't
do
done
wrong,
a complete
right?
calculation
They
on
demonize all law
the
enforcement.
effects of a shutdown and the difference between which employees are indispensable under the statute and which ones not. It will certainly disrupt all of our normal programs, including our grant programs to state and local law enforcement, and to our ability to conduct our normal efforts with respect to the entire scope of our activities, including helping state and locals fight violent crime.
Thank you, sir, and Happy New Year.
It
And I
doesn't
yield
seem
back the
like
balance of
they're
my time.
actually
Gentleman
able
yields
to
back.
do
The
that.
gentleman, Mr. McClintock from California is recognized.
Happy
Thank you,
New
Mr.
Year.
Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, looking again at
Guys.
the appointment of Jack Smith and David Weiss, this double standard of
Did he
justice couldn't be
just
more
wish him a
glaring.
Happy New Year?
Jack Smith was deeply
What in the
involved in the
Satanist
IRS
Roman
scandal
calendar?
that targeted conservative political groups to harass. His malicious prosecution of former Governor McDonnell was unanimously overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. Chief Justice Roberts rebuked Smith directly for attempting to criminalize political activity. You appointed him to prosecute Joe Biden's chief rival for the presidency. And then we have the appointment of David Weiss. Weiss deliberately allowed the statute of limitations to run out on any charges that could have implicated Joe Biden in influence peddling. He originally offered Hunter Biden a sweetheart deal that was ultimately upended by the court. And he's the one you appointed to pursue the charges that could implicate Joe Biden. That leads me to only two explanations, either corruption or incompetence. So which is it?
Those are the kind of
Exactly.
questions that judges would rule out of order.
I'm sure you would. Which is it?
Look, I said before, and I
Yeah,
will
answer
say
the
again,
question.
Mr. Weiss was the Republican appointed United States attorney appointed by
But
President Trump.
do you at least see the obvious double standard applied in these two appointments?
Mr. Weiss was a Republican appointee. Mr. Smith is not registered to either party. His entire
I don't
career
know what
was
their
as
party
a career
registrations are.
prosecutor.
I'm not
That
asking what
does
their
not
party
seem like a
registrations
double
are. I'm
standard.
asking about their records
It-
and how
That's
those
exactly
records
why it's a
would
double
commend
standard,
them
because you
to the
have two different,
appointments that you
just
made.
two different
This is a
standards,
question of
and we
judgment,
just
and it's a
learned that he's
question of
basing it on their
motive.
party.
What was motivating you to do this?
Mr. Smith had a nationwide reputation for integrity and for
Oh, please, not
appropriate
here.
prosecution. His work can be measured by what he actually has filed. Everyone in the
This is
country can see
exactly
the
why-
How can
indictments
you
that he has
say that
charged.
Senator Graham
after
would
he
not
was so heavily
hear
implicated in the
anything
IRS
about
scandal,
him being put on the
or the
Supreme Court.
rebuke that the Supreme Court
Merrick
gave in
Garland
many
is
other
garbage.
examples? But let me go on. We've had two IRS whistleblowers inform Congress of attempts by senior Justice Department officials to obstruct the criminal investigation into millions of dollars of ill-gotten and undeclared income to Hunter Biden. They noted several deviations by department officials from normal process that provided preferential treatment, in this case to Hunter Biden, a direct quote, including allowing the statute of limitations to lapse, requesting IRS and FBI management level investigative communications, prohibiting investigators from referring to the big guy or dad in witness interviews, excluding the investigative team from meetings with defense counsel, and notifying defense counsel of pending search warrants. The U.S. Attorney's Office even tipped off the Bidens of an impending search of a storage unit where their records were being kept. Now that sounds an awful lot like obstruction of justice to me. Was that coming from you or from somebody else?
I'm sorry, I don't was that coming from you? I don't understand the question.
All of the actions that your employees took to obstruct the investigation of Hunter Biden and the earnings that he made,
Again,
and the
he's been
taxes
acting for me.
he
Look at
failed
Merrick
to
Garland
declare,
acting
their
shocked
source, and
and
ultimately
confused.
who they were paid to.
I'm going to say again, with respect to the Hunter Biden investigation, that it has been and still is in the hands of Mr. Weiss, an appointee of President Trump. I don't know about all of these allegations. Some of them appear to have been from the period when The Attorney General appointed by President Trump was still the Attorney General.
Do these charges trouble you at all?
Mr. Weiss will have an opportunity to explain the decisions.
Well, you're
that
the
he
guy
made.
in charge. Does this trouble you?
I have intentionally
He's going to
not
not look
involve
into
myself
anything
in the facts of the case, not
so that
because
he
I'm trying
can
to get
throw the
out of
entire thing under the
responsibility,
bus. Because
but
if he
because I'm trying
familiarizes
to
himself with
pursue
these
my
things,
responsibility.
he won't be able to act like
FBI
they're a
director
total bunk.
testified before this committee of an uptick in, quote, known or suspected terrorists coming across the southern border. And he told us that the southern border represents a massive security threat. Those were his words, a massive security threat. Do you agree?
I am perfectly happy to align myself with the director of the FBI.
Well, why is it then that we, senior
But
administration,
you won't do
rescind the
that with
Trump
some of your
era
investigators
orders
that you're going to
that
try
had
to throw under the
secured
bus
that
later.
border?
We see you. We
We've
see
seen
you,
an
Garland.
exponential increase
I'm
in
the gentleman.
suspected
We've been
terrorists.
watching you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The witness can respond. He chooses.
I mean, this is the answer to this question about immigration law is an extremely long answer. I would defer to the Department of Homeland Security, which is responsible for the physical security and about first contact at the border. With
Well, we've
respect,
tried to get answers from him, and he doesn't give them to us, so we're hoping you would. I understand, Mr. Attorney General, you've requested a short break, so we'll take a short break and resume in 5 minutes.
okay, sorry.
Okay, everybody. So that's what's going on today. Let's see. I'm gonna mute it because I don't know how long it's gonna be going like that. So quick 5-minute break, everybody. Let's go see what everyone's talking about over on Pilled. Sorry if you hear me typing. I'm working on a couple of things while we're doing this. So let's see over on Pilled. Duppy says, I think it might refer to the Jewish New Year. Oh, I didn't mean to call the Jewish New Year a Satanist Roman holiday. I just don't know. When is the Jewish New Year? I'm Irish. I have no idea. Okay. I don't mean to be rude. I'm just Irish. We don't care about that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Tam growls like New Year. It was so inappropriate to say stuff like that in the middle of the fall. Okay, let's see. Dondo says, I'm struggling to hear what they're saying. Is it low? Let's see. Well, I've got the volume for them at 100%, which is why I try to keep my voice low. Because it is sometimes these broadcasts, they are really difficult to hear. So, but I don't have a way to enhance that. I've got all of my audio set up a certain way. The way it's supposed to be the best way. Let me make sure it's all there. Stereo audio, and we'll see if that works any better. So they're still on break right now, but I'm gonna unmute it, you guys, and tell me if it's any louder. Ew, gross, Adam Schiff. I just saw Adam Schiff. Let me know if that's any louder, okay? Or if that's any better. We have 5 by 5 or 0 by 0 if it's not there. I guess they're just kind of milling about right now, but they will be back in about 5 minutes, and we'll determine whether or not the change that I just made to my audio is better. If you can tell a change already just from my microphone, let me know in the comments. Let's see over on Rumble. TXPC guy says, when they say the word smart, it means like China has in its cities. Yeah. TXPC guy says he won't answer the J6 questions. And so basically the AG gets to recuse himself on matters that could implicate Biden. Yeah, he appears to have made, TXPC guy, yes, he appears to have made that exact agreement when he was nominated. Because he's promising that he wouldn't look into anything that has to do with Hunter Biden. And I think it's pretty clear actually right now what he's doing. So he doesn't want to look into that, because if he looks into that and familiarizes himself with the facts that that Mr. Weiss, who he keeps naming, has collected or has not collected, if he has any oversight of that at all, right, he could be responsible for how it goes, good or bad, right? If it goes well and you know Trump is prosecuted, whatever, or if it goes unwell for the deep state and we catch on to what they're doing. He wants to be able to throw this Weiss guy under the bus so that he doesn't have any responsibility for it. That's the only reason he's not looking into this. He has every responsibility to look into this, but he's not doing it for the very reason that he wants to be able to say later, oh, hey, you know, I didn't know anything about that. They love to say stuff like that. I was not aware of that. I didn't know anything about that. And if they are questioned additionally on top of them saying that, then the other Democrats in the House come badgering the witness. They're badgering all of those accusations that they always make, right? So this is their only reason that he's not looked into this. And I believe him when he says, I promised I wouldn't look into this. I believe that. We should all believe him when he says stuff like that. There's a little bit of truth in everything that he's saying. And how rich is it, guys? I mean, we know that the Democrats project, and we've seen that they've tried to, you know, turn the tables on us as far as who wanted the police defunded, because now, you know, we've elevated that, you know, to let's defund the actual problem child, okay? Or the actual problem children, which are the executive level agencies created and funded by the U.S. House and Senate. Okay, that's the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA. They're out of control, totally out of control. So that's who we need to be checking. That's who we need to be defunding. And for Merrick Garland to say basically that he has the authority to do and investigate anything and whatever he wants, basically, you know, he's got unchecked power. We know that they believe that. They're behaving as though they believe that about themselves, that they were given basically the authority to do whatever they want or to not do what they took an oath to do. And so that's the thing. It's like we need to remind them they actually took an oath. So it's not letting the country fall into shambles. They're violating oath, and they know it. We know it. Everybody's aware. Okay. Let's go and check to see if anybody has any. Hello, Uncensored Abe. Welcome. Oh, Dondo. Dondo says, it's all good now. I turned up my volume. Sorry. Okay, there you go. Oh, Duppy, thank you so much. Duppy says Jewish New Year's Rosh Hashanah, and it's September 15th this year. Okay, well, I didn't mean to be racially insensitive or culturally insensitive. They're like the only people that they can dual wield, you know, racism and cultural, you know, appropriation. I don't know. It's fine. I'm Irish, guys. I'm Irish, Scottish, and Welsh. I don't know anything about the Jewish holidays, so that wasn't an attempt to call, you know. Anyways, next topic. Patriot Drummer says, good time to dry the laundry. Yeah. Everyone go put your laundry in the dryer and come back. They're about to reconvene. Welcome, Uncensored Abe. Yeah. Patriot Drummer says, that was exciting. Yeah. Well, hey, welcome to the world of congressional hearings. Welcome to C-SPAN. That's what I should have. I should act like C-SPAN should have like a host that's narrating throughout. But they should have a channel that does like sports commentary for the congressional hearings, and I'm gonna apply for that position when they announce that they're hiring for it. Yeah, Uncensored Abe says he's going to the store and he's losing his mind with this POS Garland. Yeah. Oh, I can't read that comment. Thank you guys over on Pilled and Foxhole. You guys are great. And oopsies, what's going on here? Let's see. Oh, It seems as though having just a bit of an issue, but it's okay. If you can still hear me, give me a 5x5. Okay, I think everything's fine now. But it looks like C-SPAN's messing with me, so sorry you guys. If my computer glitched out for a minute, I apologize. Looks as though the feed is down a little bit. C-SPAN has no excuse for the feed being down. Oh, here it is. It came back on now. All right, guys. Let's get this shared back on. They should be convening any moment now. Thank you guys for being here. Here we are. Please like and share. Feel free to comment over on the Rumble chat or on Pilled and Foxhole. Any moment now. Questions if you have any. And share this out so that people might understand the ridiculousness of what is being testified to here today. It is ridiculous, but you all hear Sheila Jackson these excellent questions to Attorney General Garland. She pointed out that they've been investigating reportedly less than 1% of the human trafficking and child trafficking cases that have been brought to the FBI. She was not happy. She had detailed questions about fentanyl. Okay, even the Democrats down in Texas are on the right. They're reading the right book. We might not be on the same page yet, but they're reading the right book. Okay? So thank you everybody for being here. We're about to get started again. We're just doing live commentary on Attorney General Garland's testimony to the House Judiciary Committee. I should put that in the ticker. Let me update that so y'all know which committee he's testifying to. Don't see it. Thank you so much for being here. So you know what, guys? And this is something that I want to point out. I know that we don't like Mitch McConnell. He's weird. He's been shutting down. But street cred, he gets street cred. A lot of it just for blocking Merrick Garland from being appointed to the Supreme Court. Okay? He did one other thing that I really liked, but when he refused to hear to hold hearings to assess and to vet Merrick Garland for the Supreme Court. I mean, guys, it's proving to have been one of the more critical and crucial decisions in preserving.
Committee will come to order. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Johnson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Garland, great to see you. Thank you for your service to the nation. And the nation watches as the Republicans have no answer for why they want to focus and obsess on Hunter Biden receiving $2 million from Burisma after serving on a board that he said he was not qualified to serve on. But yet, the Saudi Arabians gave $2 billion to Jared Kushner, who conducted Middle East strategy for his dear old dad, Donald Trump. He got $2 billion for something that he is not equipped to do, which is investment banking. And so Republicans looking at Hunter Biden instead of Jared Kushner, Americans don't understand how that could be. And they also are increasingly alarmed about the fact that the Republicans in control of the House only seem to have three objectives. One is to impeach Joe Biden. Number two is to shut down, is to impeach or get rid of Kevin McCarthy, actually. And the third is to shut down government, And a subset of that is to defund the DOJ
Don't talk about Kevin
and the
McCarthy.
FBI for trying to
That's our problem.
hold Donald Trump accountable.
You can leave his name out of your
So the
mouth.
American people are watching that, and they also appreciate the fact that you've had a distinguished career as a prosecutor and a DOJ official, as well as 24 years on the
Failed
bench.
Supreme Court nominee.
You served on the second highest court of the land
But
as
failed
a
to reach the
judge
top.
for 24 years, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals.
Mitch McConnell.
We appreciate your
got in his way.
service. You were for 7
That's
years.
the one thing Mitch McConnell did right. It was a very important
The
thing.
lead, you were the, you managed that entire office. We thank you for that. You also served on the Judicial Council for a number of years. And so you are steeped in the rule of law. You are a judge
He sure is
extraordinaire.
steeped in something.
And as a judge, you never had the occasion to receive a private jet travel to an exotic location by a corporate billionaire, did you?
Yeah, did you go to Epstein Island?
You can cut your mic on.
No,
You never received an offer to get a ride on a private jet?
no.
Did you take any vacations at exclusive resorts paid for by a billionaire?
I know these are not hypothetical questions, and I think this
I
is
mean,
really
yes or
not
no?
within my
No, please just
realm.
answer them.
Of course,
I mean, you were a judge
I'm getting a little-
extraordinaire, and
little
you know
jumpy
the
here.
rules of ethics for judges because your bench had to, was covered by a code of
Yeah,
conduct.
but you're
Is
getting
that
real
not
close
correct?
to the nerves when
yes,
you're making them jumpy
all
with
the
these
judges,
questions.
federal
line
appellate
of
and district
questioning.
judges are covered by the code of conduct.
You would never have had somebody to pay for your godson's tuition to private school. Would
Again,
you?
I don't want to answer these kind of hypothetical, at least for me, they're hypothetical questions.
Guys, is
What I would
it-
say is that I always, as a judge, and I've said this before and quite publicly and long ago, always held myself to the highest standards of ethical responsibility imposed by the code, and that's really all I can answer here.
And it's required that judges and justices avoid even appearances of impropriety. Isn't that correct?
Again, I know you're asking this both hypothetically and not hypothetically. All I can say is I follow the code of judicial conduct and includes avoiding appearances. That's
Well,
right.
let me ask you this question. Senator Whitehouse and I sent a letter to you alerting you to the fact that we were asking the Judicial Council to refer the matter of Clarence Thomas being in violation of the Ethics in Government Act to the Justice Department. And after that, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, along with myself and others, requested that you take that matter up directly. Have you responded to either one of those letters? And if not, why not? And what action have you taken pursuant to those letters?
Gentleman may respond.
He wants him to investigate a Supreme Court judge.
I assume that if you sent the letter, we have it, and I'll speak to the Office of Legislative Affairs about where it is at this point.
Is
The time the gentleman has
So what about
expired.
the Hunter
Gentleman's
Biden
expired.
case?
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Ison.
Thank you.
Oh.
Good day, Mr. Attorney General, and this may be the reason that it's good for you to leave the Chief Justice and that group before each of us speak, because you would have already heard all that. I want to thank you personally for your office and your engagement on Camp Lejeune and on obviously a vast amount of litigation. That is one of the many, many jobs that falls at your feet. One of the jobs that falls at our feet here is that we are watchdogs of the executive branch. You have previously said that you are not Congress's attorney, and you've said you're not the president's attorney. And I'm assuming that you're neither our prosecutor nor our defense attorney, and you are neither the president's prosecutor nor defense attorney. And that's why today's investigation really does deal with the fact that if you're not, by definition, the president's prosecutor, but we have an obligation to see whether or not the president or a member of his family or in concert with the president's activities, in fact, need to be overseen, admonished, or even prosecuted. And so I have a couple of questions for you, and one of them is that you have not said this very much today, but you often say, I cannot comment on that because it's an ongoing investigation. And when we ask for information, you very commonly say that it is the policy, not the law, but the policy of the Department of Justice not to provide information related to an ongoing investigation. So far, I'm on track. Is that correct?
I think I've said more than that's just a policy. I think the letters we've sent trace it to the constitutional separation of powers, to Rule 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, et cetera. But in general, I'm in accord with what you're saying.
Rule 6E of the Federal
One of the
Rules
challenges we face is that just a matter of weeks ago, a federal judge found the actions of now special prosecutor to be so outside what he could agree to that he pushed back on a plea settlement and nullified it and sent the U.S. attorney going back. In light of that, don't you think it's appropriate for that portion to be considered a pre-ongoing investigation, and for Congress to legitimately look at the activities leading up to that failed plea bargain, rather than wait until weeks, months, or years from now a case is fully settled?
Yeah. So if you'll give me a chance,
Merrick Garland, you want to talk about the separation of powers issue? These executive agencies creating rules with the force and effect of law, that's the separation of powers issue.
To determine whether the parties were in agreement as to what each had agreed to, and determined that they were not. Plea fell apart, as you know, and there's been another prosecution. So that leads to the second thing. We are in, Mr. Weiss is in the midst of an ongoing prosecution on the very matter that you're talking about.
Okay, but Mr. Attorney General, if we believe, and we do, at least on this side of the dais, that a pattern of behavior is occurring relative to the investigation of Hunter Biden, particularly and including, well, he lived in the vice president's home, well, he operated commingled with the vice president, and even today as he travels with the president. So in light of that, can you agree that, in fact, it should be reasonable for us to look at a number of items, including, and one that I want your answer on, and I know we have limited time. Mr. Weiss supposedly had this ability to bring a prosecution anywhere. He now explicitly has that ability. However, are you concerned, and should we have the right to look into the fact that political appointees in California and in the District of Columbia refused to, in fact, cooperate with him in those investigation that he was charged with doing in Delaware, but which flowed over into their jurisdictions? Isn't that, in fact, an example where those political appointees of the now president, that their decision not to cooperate with him creates at least an appearance of political interference with the investigation of the president's son and possibly activities related to the president?
Look, I'm happy to answer this question in hypothetical, but not in the specifics, because I have stayed out of this matter. In the hypothetical, it is the normal process of the department that if a U.S. attorney in one district wants to bring a case in another, they go to that other district and consult. It's perfectly appropriate. They do that in order to determine what the policies are in that district, what the practices have been in that district, what the judges are like in that district. A U.S. attorney in another district does not have the authority to deny another U.S. attorney the ability to go forward, and I have assured Mr. Weiss that he would have the authority one way or the other, and I think Mr. Weiss's letters completely reflect that.
Thank you. To be continued.
Time the gentleman has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California for 5 minutes.
Welcome, Mr. Attorney General, and thank you for leading the department with such integrity. We meet today at a momentous time in our history. The country is about to go through a great trial.
I should have
By
given
this,
you
I
guys
do
a
not
trigger
mean any
warning,
of the several
but
trials
I
of the
didn't know
former
that ship
president,
was next.
but rather a trial of the proposition that we are a nation of laws, committed to the rule of law, and that no one is above the law. It is a proposition well known around the world because it is the one essential ingredient in all democracies. We have all professed our belief in this principle, but it has never been truly tested,
They
not like
really
it is
don't
today.
like the term
In this
republic
committee, we are engaged
because
in a
it
portion
undermines the
of that
administrative deep
trial.
state.
The chairman would abuse the power of this committee by trying to interfere in the prosecutions of Donald Trump, by trying to use the committee's power of subpoena to compel criminal discovery, in effect, making the committee a kind of criminal defense firm for the former president. In doing so, the chairman of this committee would establish a very different proposition. Through Mr. Jordan's actions, he would establish the principle that the rule of law should apply to almost everyone, just not the leader of his party. According to this alternate proposition, if you are the president of the United States and you lose your reelection, you can violate the law and Constitution to try to stay in power. And if you are successful, well, then maybe you get to be president for life. And if you fail, there is no repercussion. This proposition is also well
You
known
want
to
to
the
talk about
world,
things that there's no
and it is
evidence
called
for.
dictatorship. Mr. Jordan hopes to camouflage his assault on the rule of law by falsely claiming that Donald Trump is the victim of unequal justice and Hunter Biden its beneficiary. It is a claim as transparently political as it is devoid of any factual basis. And it is cynical, based on the belief that the American people cannot discern fact from fiction. But I am betting on America. History has shown that those who bet against her are rarely successful, and more often they end up covered with shame. I believe in the rule of law, and I thank you, Mr. Attorney General, for defending it. Let me now turn to some of the false claims asserted by the former president and some on this committee. On Sunday, the former president appeared on a national news Sunday program and was asked about 4 indictments and 91 counts facing him. His response was, Biden indictments. Excuse me, Biden political indictments. He said to the Attorney General, indict him. Mr. Attorney General, I want to give you a chance to respond. Was the president telling the truth, or was he lying when he said that President Biden told you to indict him?
No one has told me to indict, and in this case, the decision to indict was made by the special counsel.
So that statement the president made on Sunday was false?
I'm just going to say again that no one has told me who should be indicted in
Did they tell
any
you who
matter
should
like
not
this,
be indicted?
and the decision about indictment was made by Mr. Smith.
Let me ask you this question about the prosecution of Hunter Biden. The prosecutor in that case, Mr. Weiss, was appointed not by Joe Biden, but he was appointed in the first instance by Donald Trump. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he was continued in that position, was he not?
He was continued in that position, yes.
And Mr. Attorney General, can you imagine the hue and cry you would hear from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle if you had removed him from that position? Can you imagine the claims that you had removed a prosecutor who was diligently investigating Hunter Biden? Can you imagine the outrage they would have expressed?
I can say that during my confirmation hearing, I discussed with many senators on that side of the aisle their desire and actual insistence that Mr. Weiss be continued to have responsibility for that matter. And I promised, and I said at my confirmation hearing, that he would be permitted to stay and that I would not interfere.
And Mr. Attorney General, that was exactly the right decision. That was the right decision to give the American people the confidence that even a prosecutor chosen by the former president would continue in the investigation into the son of the current president. That was exactly the right decision. Exactly the right decision. And my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would have been screaming if it were otherwise. But their attack on you is completely devoid of fact, of principle. But I appreciate you doing the right thing for the Department of Justice and, more importantly, the right thing for the American people. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky.
Wow.
Attorney General Garland, Elon Musk was
It's
a
the
Democrat
acting that
who
gets
admittedly
me, you know,
supported
guys.
Biden,
It's
but then he
just-
became a critic of the administration and exposed the censorship regime. Now, per public reports, the DOJ has opened not one but two investigations of Elon Musk. Mark Zuckerberg, on the other hand, spent $400 million in 2020 tilting the elections secretly for Democrats. No investigations whatsoever. To the American public, these look like mafia tactics. You pays your money, we look the other way. You get in our way, we punish you. The American public sees what these tactics are. Now I want to direct your attention to a video here that we're going to play.
Obviously, that's a significant matter. It is an ongoing criminal investigation, and so I'm not going to comment on an ongoing criminal investigation.
Were those pipe bombs operable?
Again,
The ATF is the expert.
Again, it's an ongoing criminal investigation, and under longstanding policy, I cannot comment.
As you know, this is a very active, ongoing investigation, and there are some restrictions on that, but we will
Yes,
do
we
our
can
best
handle
to respond.
classified information, and we fund your department, and so you need to provide that.
It's not, respectfully, it's not an issue of classification. It's an issue of commenting on ongoing criminal investigations, which is something that by longstanding department policy, we are restricted in doing. And in fact, the last administration actually strengthened those policies partly
That's
because—
not our policy, though, and we fund you, so let's move on. Do you know how?
So I'm not going to violate this norm of the rule of law. I'm not going to comment on an investigation that's ongoing.
Peter Navarro was indicted for contempt of Congress. Aren't you, in fact, in contempt of Congress when you give us this answer? This is an answer that's appropriate at a press conference. It's not an answer that's appropriate when we are asking questions. We are the committee that is responsible for your creation, for your existence of your department. You cannot continue to give us these answers. Aren't you, in fact, in contempt of Congress when you refuse to answer?
Congressman, I have the greatest respect for Congress. I also have the greatest respect for the Constitution and laws of the United States. The protection of pending investigations and ongoing investigations, as I briefly discussed in another dialogue a few moments ago, goes back to the separation of powers, which gives to the executive branch the sole authority to conduct prosecutions. It's a requirement of due process and respect for those who are under investigation, the protection of their civil rights. So
Well,
it's
with all
nothing to do
due respect,
for Congress.
with all due respect to that, Iran-Contra was an ongoing investigation, and that didn't stop Congress from getting the answers. You're getting in the way of our constitutional duty. You're citing the Constitution. I'm going to cite it. It's our constitutional duty to do oversight. Now, in that video, that was your answer to a question to me 2 years ago when I said how many agents or assets of the government were present on January 5th and January 6th and agitating in the crowd to go into the Capitol and how many went into the Capitol. Can you answer that now?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Oh, last time, you don't know how many there were or there were none?
I don't know the answer to either of those questions. If there were any, I don't know how many. I don't know whether there are any.
I think you may have just perjured yourself that you don't know that there were any. You want to say that again, that you don't know that there were
I have
any?
no personal knowledge of this matter. I think what I said the last time.
You've had 2 years to find out. And the day, by the way, that was in reference to Ray Epps, and yesterday you indicted him. Isn't that a wonderful coincidence? On a misdemeanor. Meanwhile, you're sending grandmas to
like
prison.
this guy.
You're putting people away for 20 years for merely filming. Some people weren't even there yet. You've got the guy on video who's saying go into the Capitol. He's directing people to the Capitol before the speech ends. He's at the site of the first breach. You've got all the goods on him, 10 videos, and it's an indictment for a misdemeanor? The American public isn't buying it. I yield the balance of my time to Chairman Jordan.
May I answer the question?
I'm going to ask you one now. We'll let the gentleman.
Yeah.
Go ahead, but
in discovery, in the cases that were filed with respect to January 6, the Justice Department prosecutors provided whatever information they had about the question that you're asking. With respect to Mr. Epps, the FBI has said that he was not an employee or informant of the FBI. Mr. Epps has been charged, and there's a proceeding, I believe, going on today on that subject.
The charge is a joke. I yield to the chairman.
The time the gentleman has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Mr. Attorney General, my colleague just said that you should be held in contempt of Congress, and that is quite rich, because the guy who's leaving the hearing room right now, Mr. Jordan, is about 500 days into evading his subpoena, about 500 days. So if we're going to talk about contempt of Congress, let's get real. I mean, are you serious that Jim Jordan, a witness to one of the greatest crimes ever committed in America, a crime where more prosecutions have occurred than any crime committed in America, refuses to help his country, and we're going to get lectured
Oh my gosh, this is
about
from
subpoena
Lingling's,
compliance and contempt of
Lingling's,
Congress? Jim
Arm
Jordan won't
Candy.
even honor a lawful subpoena? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? There's no credibility on that side.
No.
Mr. Attorney General, you are serious. They are not.
Oh.
You are decent. They are not.
Oh.
You are fair. They are not. So I welcome you to the law firm of Insurrection LLP, where they work every single day on behalf of one client, Donald Trump. And they do that at the expense of millions of Americans who need the government to stay open, who want their kids safe in their schools, and would like to see Ukraine stay in the fight so that we don't help Russia. That's the expense that this nonsense, this clown show, I'd call it a clown show, except they actually have real responsibilities that affect real Americans. It's the difference between one side that believes in governing and one side that believes in ruling. You've tried to comply with this committee. In fact, last week, one of your special agents came here for an interview, brought his lawyer, and was told that he couldn't have his lawyer present. Mr. Jordan, who tells all of us he knows so much about the Constitution, wouldn't afford one of your employees one of the basic constitutional rights to have a lawyer present. In fact, they threatened to call the Capitol Police and arrest a lawyer that was brought. Are you familiar with that standoff that occurred last week, Mr. Attorney General?
Generally, yes.
Well, your office also sent a letter detailing it, that you were willing to comply, but you'd like him to have a lawyer, and I'd like to submit that to the record with unanimous consent.
Without objection.
All this
appointed
fake evidence they're
Mr.
submitting.
Weiss?
Mr. Trump was the last person who appointed Mr. Weiss to the position of U.S. Attorney. I appointed him to the position of Special Counsel last month.
Who initially appointed John Durham?
Mr. Durham was, I believe, also appointed by President Trump, and Mr. Barr appointed him as Special Counsel.
And again, these guys are so upset that Donald Trump's appointed prosecutors aren't doing enough of the corruption that Donald Trump wants them to do. So either they are just following the law, or they're not as corrupt, and they're not willing to go as far as they think that Donald Trump deserves. That's what they're asking to happen here. Also, doesn't it seem that they want it both ways when it comes to the special counsel? A lot of questions suggested that the special counsel should be independent, but when they didn't like the direction of the special counsel, you were asked why you didn't interfere more or involve yourself more or investigate more. Did you get that sense that you're kind of stuck here?
When I make an appointment, somebody be special counsel or a prosecutor, the appointment is without respect to what the outcomes of the case will be.
Your office has made a number of reforms to 702, targeting foreign nationals, but those reforms have not been put into law. 702 is also one of the best weapons we have to go after fentanyl. Can you tell us if you would support putting some of those reforms into law so we don't have to live administration to administration to see if they're going to be followed?
I would. Section 702 provides us with the greatest amount, at least the Justice Department, every morning, the greatest amount of intelligence that we receive about dangerous threats to the United States.
From foreign nationals?
From foreign nationals. I am quite aware and sensitive to civil liberties concerns with respect to the queries. And for that reason, I put into place and I extended some of those that Mr. Barr had begun at the end of his term. and I put further ones in place. Those have led to a dramatic reduction in the number of queries and a dramatic reduction in the number of non-compliant queries. I believe those are appropriate reforms, and I would be in favor of codifying them, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General, and thank you for coming and doing something that the chairman is unwilling to do, testify to Congress. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Attorney General, on August 11, 2023, you appointed Mr. David Weiss, U.S. Attorney for the District of Delaware, as special counsel to oversee the investigation on Hunter Biden. I don't think the question has been asked yet. Why did you choose to appoint him as special counsel?
The explanation was given, and as far to the extent I can give I'm permitted to give an explanation, is the one I gave and sent to the Congress, which is that Mr. Weiss requested it, that I had promised to give him all the resources that he need, that he had reached the stage of the investigation where he thought it would be appropriate. And under those extraordinary circumstances, I thought the public interest would be served by making him special counsel.
How did Mr. Weiss's name emerge? Who recommended him? How was it brought to you or presented to you that this would be the best person to be the special counsel?
No, I'm not going to get into internal discussions. Mr. Weiss asked that he be appointed as special counsel, and I granted that request and made him special counsel, but I'm not going to get into internal deliberations in the Justice Department.
But I think you said earlier you've had no discussions with the White House and certainly the president in regards to that. Is that accurate?
Of course. Nothing came from the White House. That's right.
So on August 20th, 2023, the Washington Post article claimed that Mr. Weiss worked with Hunter Biden and Hunter Biden's late brother, Beau Biden. Were you aware that there was a relationship there with the Biden family?
I'm not familiar with this. I don't know when he did what.
They worked together on legal cases in prior years. You were unaware of that?
I'm not familiar with that.
And the article claims it would have been inevitable for Mr. Weiss and the president to cross paths in a state like Delaware. They knew each other. There was a relationship there, but you were unaware of any of this before you appointed him?
I'm unaware of this, but attorneys who are in practice certainly get to know people. So it's very difficult anywhere in the country for attorneys not to get to know attorneys on other sides of matters.
You said previously that Mr. Weiss had the ultimate authority over the investigation of the president's son, including prior to his appointment as special counsel. And you stand by that statement, I'm sure?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Just that in fact, there was that the ultimate authority was still there with Mr. Weiss to make determinations on that case.
You mean still as special counsel? Yes.
Yes, special counsel. So the buck stopped there, and that's been determined. According to whistleblower testimony, Mr. Weiss' deputy, AUSA Leslie Wolf, objected to search warrants of President Biden's guest house, denied investigation access to a storage unit containing all the documents from the vacated office of the law firm. Is Leslie Wolf still employed by the Department of Justice?
I'm not going to talk about any individuals in the Justice Department. As I said before, singling out individuals has led to serious threats to their safety. I will say that the supervisor of this investigation was Mr. Weiss. He's responsible for all the decisions that were made. Excuse me. Many of the things that you're saying occurred during the previous administration. I apologize.
Okay. Well, there was absolutely a discussion.
Okay, Marco Rubio.
By Leslie Wolf that if they told investigators or got involved with this, that there would ultimately be issues. You still believe that at this point that the entire investigation has moved in the correct discretion, was handled by the correct discretion of the individuals involved?
Mr. Weiss was a longstanding career prosecutor who was appointed by President Trump. He has an outstanding reputation. And I have confidence that he will proceed as appropriate. And at the end of his investigation,
why wouldn't he want to guarantee that this was a fair investigation?
Just like Mr. Durham.
That way we would have a Biden appointee and a Trump appointee who would agree, right? That would be productive, right?
He did various things that were done.
I yield the balance of my time to the chairman.
Mr. Garland, what changed On July 10th, 2023, David Weiss wrote Senator Graham and said, I have not requested special counsel designation. August 11th, you announced that he's now the special counsel. What happened in that 31 days?
As I said publicly several days before my announcement, I think 3 days, Mr. Weiss had asked to become special counsel. He explained that he had reached the stage of his investigation where he thought that appropriate.
What stage is that?
I had promised to give him the resources he needed.
What stage is that? He'd reached the stage. After 5 years, what stage are we in? We in the beginning stage, the middle stage, the end stage, the keep hiding the ball stage? What stage are we in?
I think this one I would go back to the videotape where I said I'm not permitted to discuss ongoing investigations.
Well, isn't that convenient? Something changed in 31 to 32 days from July 10th to August 11th. I think it's two brave whistleblowers came forward and a judge called BS on the plea deal. You guys tried to get past them. That's what I think happened. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The House Judiciary Committee has the responsibility of helping to ensure the rule of law. Unfortunately, this committee's chairman ignored a bipartisan congressional subpoena. The horrible precedent set by this chairman has damaged the credibility of all congressional committees.
He's not a good
information
actress.
from witnesses and damaged the rule of law. Attorney General Garland, thank you
For
your public
Democrats,
service.
politics
Thank you for
is
being here
like
today.
where you
I'd
go
like to
when
start by
you're
showing
ugly
a
and a
video
bad
of January
actor.
6th, and then I'm going to ask you some questions.
Because if you're a good
about
actor,
that
you
day.
still get work in Hollywood, even if you're ugly. But these guys,
Hey, brother, we're boots on the ground here. We're moving on to Capitol now. I'll give you a boots on the ground update here in a few.
Multiple capital entries. Multiple capital entries. We're still taking metal, sharpened objects, missiles to include bottles and rocks, and hand-thrown chemical-grade fireworks.
which officer is that? Is that Ray Epps? Was that the officer that they was quoting just now?
This is now effectively a riot.
1349 hours declaring it a riot.
Attorney General Garland, the Department of Justice charged over 1,100 defendants in connection with the
Don't lie
attack
to the
on our
people
Capitol,
anymore.
correct?
You want the truth.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm going to state two facts. The people who showed up on January 6th to attack the nation's Capitol were supporters of Donald Trump. They attacked the Capitol to stop Congress from certifying the fact that Donald Trump lost the election. Those two facts were so horrible that some in the right-wing media and some
fact, he did
Republican
not
members
lose
of
the
Congress
election.
could not handle that, so they made up conspiracy theories. In fact, Donald Trump called January 6th a beautiful day. He said the people who showed up had love in their hearts. The Republican member of Congress said
That's
January 6th
true.
was like a normal tourist visit. And some
That's
Republicans
absolutely
have said
true.
there were no weapons used on January 6th. Attorney General Garland, were there weapons used in the attack on January 6th?
On Ashley Babbitt?
Yes, in the video, you already saw some of the weapons that were used, and there are obviously many more, many hours of video.
Another conspiracy theory is that somehow the FBI actually orchestrated this attack. So I'm going to go through some cases that have
Well,
gone
it's,
through
it's
completion and
conspiracy
resulted in
fact.
sentencing. Joe Biggs was sentenced to 17 years in prison for seditious conspiracy and other counts related to attack on our nation's Capitol.
Look how
Have
seriously
you
they say
seen
that. He was
any shred
sentenced
of
to
evidence that
prison.
Joe Biggs was an FBI
They get
agent?
really emotional.
No.
It's an
In
act.
fact,
It's all an
Joe
act.
Biggs was a member of the Proud Boys. This is what Assistant U.S. Attorney Connor Monroe stated about Joe Biggs and the Proud Boys in court.
Let's
He
talk
stated,
about
quote,
Ray Epps next.
they
Do Ray
saw
Epps
themselves
next.
as Donald Trump's army, fighting to keep their preferred leader in power no matter what the law or the courts had
It
to say
sounds like
about it.
Dumbledore's army, and that's a
And on
good thing if you read the Harry
September
Potter
4th,
books.
Joe Biggs stated that he is confident Trump will pardon him. He said, quote, "Oh, I know he'll pardon us. We're his supporters. We went there like he asked." I'd like to now ask you about the case of Stuart Rhodes, who was sentenced to 18 years in prison
Free
for the
Stuart
attack on our
Rhodes.
nation's capital. Have you seen any shred of evidence that Stuart Rhodes was an FBI agent?
No.
Stuart
In
Rhodes is
fact,
not, but
was
he
the
will be
founder of Oath
pardoned.
Keepers, a far-right paramilitary
Trump's
organization.
gonna pardon
Rhodes
Stuart
asked
Rhodes.
Donald Trump to call them
Trump's
up
gonna pardon
as militia.
John Schaefer as well.
And I'd like to ask about Enrique Tarrio, who was sentenced to 22 years in the attack on our nation's capital. Have you seen any evidence that Enrique Tarrio was an FBI agent?
He was not an FBI agent.
In fact, he was the leader of the Proud Boys.
And because we know
What
they
happened on
tell a
January
little bit
6th
of
is
truth
that
with a lot
Donald
of
Trump's
lies,
supporters
some of these people
showed up because
could
he
have been
told them
FBI
to.
agents.
They marched to the Capitol
Okay,
because he
but
told them to. They attacked the
not all of
Capitol because he told them to stop the steal. That is the truth, and that is how history is going to record it. Thank you for prosecuting those who attacked our nation's
Thank
capital.
you for prosecuting. No, history's not going to record
Gentleman
it
yields
that
back.
way.
The chair now
Ted
recognizes the
Lieu.
gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a slide up here, and I'll start. In October or March of 22, Mr. Weiss was denied the ability to bring charges against Hunter Biden in the District of Columbia. In April of that same year, you testified before the Senate Appropriations Committee that Mr. Weiss was free to run the investigation without interference from the DOJ. According to the IRS whistleblower, there was a meeting in October of 22 where Mr. Weiss said that he was not the deciding official on whether charges were filed. And we know that because we have handwritten notes from the IRS whistleblowers that was confirmed in an email to people in the meeting. Later in January, Mr. Weiss was denied the ability to bring charges again against Hunter Biden in the Central District of California. You testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee in March of this year that he had full authority. That Weiss confirmed that to us in a letter in June, that he had been granted, quote, full authority over this matter. But then he kind of backed up. In June 30th, he said, well, just kidding. My charging authority is geographically limited to my home district in Delaware. And of course, you appoint him as special counsel. So why the heck has his story changed so many times over the course of these investigations?
Congressman, I've seen all of the three letters. I've read them quite carefully. They are all consistent with each other. And I urge everyone watching this on television or anyone who's interested to look at those three letters. They are not inconsistent with each other, and there's no change in the story.
So, but you agree that he had, and you've said this publicly, that he had ultimate authority prior to the appointment of special counsel.
I've explained this
That
repeatedly
is what he's
here.
establishing.
I've explained this in another proceeding. I said that Mr. Weiss would have the authority to bring a case in any jurisdiction in which he wanted to, and Mr. Weiss has confirmed that he would have that authority. I explained that if he had to bring a case in another jurisdiction, as a matter of mechanics, it would require me me or a delegatee of mine to sign a 515 order. That is very common.
But Mr. Attorney General,
and there was nothing stopping that from happening.
Forgive me for a second, though, but when you say you have ultimate, when he wrote a letter on your behalf in June, I have ultimate authority. This is prior to the designation of special counsel. Ultimate to me means like that you can go wherever you want to.
Ultimate means
at that particular point, sir, could he file charges in the District of South Carolina? He would not have that ability, correct? He would have to go through that U.S. attorney. So that's not full authority.
All he would have to do is ask me for 515 authority, and I would sign it right away, just like when he asked me to be special counsel. Within 3 days, I signed that.
So he didn't have ultimate authority.
He had the authority because I promised that he would have the authority.
But he did not have that authority. See, here's where I'm going. If he was denied the ability to bring charges in March of 22 in the District of Columbia, if he was denied the ability to bring charges in January of 23 in the Central District of California, that's not full authority. These U.S. attorneys operate as gatekeepers, so that's not full authority to do much of anything. And you know what's remarkable to me? We sit here and we look at this, and his story has changed so many times. You know whose story hasn't changed? Mr. Shapley, Mr. Ziegler, the emails that confirm that he said, I'm not the deciding person on whether charges are filed. And you know what the response back was from his colleague at work? Yep, you covered it all, Gary. That is consistent. What Mr. Weiss has done is this shell game
and saying that he has authority, he doesn't have authority, but these gatekeepers at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia and in the Central District of California, they would have the gatekeeping authority on whether charges are brought in their jurisdictions.
I'm sorry,
Absent that designation, correct?
those words have no meaning, gatekeepers, et cetera. Mr. Weiss said he was never
What?
denied authority.
Those words have no
I'm
meaning.
the one with the authority to decide who can prosecute in a different
Wow.
jurisdiction. I know what I guaranteed, and I know what Mr. Weiss has said I guaranteed.
Mr. Chairman, I yield the balance of my time.
It's a simple question. If he already had it, why does he need it? That's the question. You said in your statement on August 11th, you said he will continue to have the authority to bring charges where, when, and wherever he decides. So how can he continue to have a power that you just gave him? That's the fundamental
Exactly.
question the gentleman from
Story
South Carolina was
doesn't add
asking.
up,
If he already had
Garland.
it, why does he need it?
And I tried to answer that he had the authority and he continued to have
When
the
did he
authority.
specifically ask you? Did you tell him ahead of time that he could get 515 status anytime? When did you tell him that he could get that if he requested it?
I made absolutely clear.
No, when? Did you tell him at the start
I
of the
made
investigation?
clear from the beginning in my statements to the Senate that he would have the authority to make any decisions that he wanted to and bring prosecutions he thought were appropriate.
The gentleman from South Carolina has expired. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr.
It's
Chairman.
that his study, it's
Attorney
just that
General
it doesn't
Garland,
add up when you look at what's
thank
going
you for your tremendous service to this country. As somebody who was trapped in the gallery on January 6th, I have to admit it's still hard for me to look
God.
at that video and imagine
the
that happened at
moon-faced
our U.S.
witch,
Capitol.
Jayapal.
And I'm deeply grateful that you have led this nation towards accountability of all those who were involved, including the former president. You have done so with full and complete attention to the facts, with a team around you that focuses on thorough investigation, and with a very clear mission that you've stated over and over and over again, despite the asked and answered on the other side, that the Justice Department works for the American people. This is a night and day transformation from a Justice Department that was constantly used by Donald Trump for his own political gain.
What they like
It is
to leave
my
out
firm
is that
belief
the Justice
that we
Department
have
works
to
for the
hold those
American
accountable
people.
who tried to destroy
But if we
our
get
country,
pissed off at the
including
Justice
former president,
Department,
or
we're
we
going to
risk
send our
losing
representatives in the
our country
legislature to
altogether.
regulate the
So I
Justice
thank you for your
Department.
steadfast leadership.
That's what they keep leaving
It is just
out.
sad that this committee has
They're
also
acting
been
as though we can't do
transformed
anything about
into a
what the Justice
soapbox for
Department does.
political conspiracy
They're saying,
theorists.
we're doing this all for
Instead of
you.
focusing on the really important issues that the American people care about.
Shut up,
And so that's
witch.
what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to focus on the critical crisis of reproductive freedom and the efforts to try and strip reproductive freedom from people across this country. As you know,
Abortion is not
a decades-long project
reproduction.
of the extreme right wing materialized last year when 5 Republican-appointed justices overturned 50 years of precedent that established the constitutional right to abortion.
Abortion
As
is
one
not
of
birth
the
control.
1 in 4
Abortion is
women
not
across this
reproduction.
country who has had an abortion.
Girls have a lot of choices
and who felt
before they're
compelled to
faced with
share my story after
abortion.
decades
Make
because
better
I
choices
saw the
before you have
attacks
to make that one.
on the right to abortion and what it would do particularly for poor women, for Black and brown and indigenous people across this country. I spoke out and shared that story. In the 22 states where Republicans control the state legislature and governorship today, all have moved to restrict reproductive rights. More than 25 million women of childbearing age now live in states where abortion access has been curtailed. And in Washington state, my home state, the Seattle Times reported that we are seeing increasing numbers of abortion patients, not only from neighboring Idaho, which we knew we would see, but also from other southern states where these restrictions are enforced. Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter this Seattle Times article into the record. She traveled 2,000 miles secretly for her Washington abortion. Why patients from the South are coming here.
Objection.
As our
Because our
fundamental
states
freedoms are
aren't putting
threatened
up
by
with it
extreme MAGA
anymore.
Republicans in Congress and across the country, we trust that the DOJ will initiate investigations and file lawsuits to protect reproductive rights. With respect to mifepristone, what has the department done to protect access to this very safe abortion drug
We know
that
that
women
y'all
can
are just
take
trying
at
to
home
get fetal
safely
tissue.
and to end a pregnancy?
We know
So
you
the
nasty Democrat
FDA
blood
authorized the use
blood
of
scientists
mifepristone as
just want
safe and
the fetal
effective.
tissue.
And it did it back in 2000. That's been challenged. first in the district court when we defended the FDA in that matter. There was an appeal in to the circuit court, which narrowed the district court's opinion in some ways, but allowed it to go forward in others.
Somebody just pointed out in the
We
Rumble
have
chat that
appeal-
Hank was the
filed
one that
cert
said that
petition,
Guam
which has
would
been
tip
granted, I
over
think,
if you built too
in the
much
Supreme
on
Court
it.
of the
That
United
was
States.
Very,
so
very
funny.
important work. Thank you.
Classic.
My home state of
Thank you for
Washington has
pointing
one of
that
the
out.
highest rates of religiously affiliated hospitals in the country, with our state's insurance commissioner's office reporting that in 2021, there were several counties lacking even one secular hospital. This is an issue under the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act when patients in need of abortion care as a life-saving treatment are denied services under the hospital's policies. What is the department doing to enforce this law, mandating that every hospital that receives Medicare funds provide, quote, necessary stabilizing treatment to patients, including abortion care?
You're right, this is a federal law.
On the
It
next break,
expressly
guys, I will
preempts
play that
any
clip of that
inconsistent
senator
state law.
suggesting that
For that
Guam
reason, we
might
filed a
capsize
lawsuit in Idaho.
if they continue to
and
build
one
on
in the
it.
district court.
For your viewing pleasure.
With respect to an Idaho law that impinged on the rights granted under EMTALA. We have filed, I think, a number of statements of interest in other places, and we're continuing to look at where it would be appropriate to intervene.
Thank you. You're on record stating that women who reside in states that have banned access to comprehensive reproductive care must remain free to seek that care in states where it is legal. I thank you for that. Can you briefly discuss the progress made by the task force and DOJ to ensure that pregnant people retain their right to travel?
Yes, look, my view about this right to travel is the same as Justice Kavanaugh's in his separate opinion. He said, this is not a particularly
This is why I talk over her, because she
The right
asks
to travel is a
such silly
constitutional
questions.
right,
What is
and
she
it
even
allows
talking about right
a woman
now?
in a state
Pregnant
that
people's
bars,
right to travel?
abortion to travel and obtain an
Look at
abortion
her
in a
face.
state in which
Look
it's
at
permitted.
her.
Thank you, Attorney General, for your commitment to this issue and to upholding the rule of law in our country.
I tried to
Appreciate
remain
your service.
professional.
Delays
I
expired.
had to
The
do that to
gentleman from
conserve
Oregon
energy
is
during the
recognized for 5
Paxton
minutes.
impeachment.
Thank you,
but
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr.
this
Attorney
is
General,
too
for being
much.
here today. I would like to go back briefly to your remarks regarding before the Senate when you were confirmed and your promise regarding Mr. Weiss. Can you explain to us in a little more detail who you promised that you would keep Mr. Weiss on this case? To whom was that promise made?
Yeah, so a number of senators in my meetings with them asked me to make that promise. I think that was discussed in my interchange with
an
the
excellent question,
senator
guys.
from Tennessee, I believe.
And did that
think we'd all
promise
like
that you
to
made
know who he made
lead
that promise to.
you to believe that even if that Mr. Weiss displayed a level of incompetence, that you would be precluded from asking him to step down or precluded from replacing him?
Look, when someone asks me to make this appointment, they didn't ask me depending upon what the outcome was. Mr. Weiss has made his appointment.
This line of questioning right here is very
decisions,
important.
and Mr. Weiss is an experienced federal prosecutor with extensive experience and with sufficient credibility to be appointed by President Trump. I just have no grounds for interfering here.
Right, so you haven't answered the question. The question was really what level of incompetence displayed by a prosecutor under your control would it take for you to make a change? But let's move on. The level of incompetence I'm referring to, I'll just read this to you. This is the same Weiss who headed an investigation that was trashed by whistleblowers who alleged that his investigation had been fixed from the outset. It's the same Weiss who ran an investigation in which agents were allegedly prevented from asking about Joe Biden, obstructed in their efforts to pursue questions, compromised by tip-offs to the Biden team on planned searches. It was the same Weiss who reportedly allowed the statute of limitations to run out on Hunter's major tax offenses, even though he had the option to extend it. It was the same Weiss who did not indict on major tax felonies and cut a plea deal that brushed aside a felony gun charge. It was the same Weiss who inked a widely panned sweetheart deal that caused a federal judge to balk at and trash a sweeping immunity grant, language that even the prosecutor admitted never been seen in a previous plea deal. So there's a list of what I would suggest under many people's definition would be incompetence. Are you saying that that's inadequate for you to have questioned what he was doing?
I'm saying that all of these are allegations. I don't know what the facts of them are. I have, as I've explained, stayed out of this investigation. I was not present at any of the meetings discussed. Some of the meetings occurred under the previous administration, where Mr. Weiss was assigned to the matter by the previous Justice Department, and I'm not in a position to comment on them.
That's too bad. Is that there's a scope of investigation memo generally issued when we start these things out. Who issued that scope of investigation memo to Mr. Weiss? Was it done back on when he was originally appointed to take on the Biden case? Is that when the memo was telling him what he was supposed to do was issued? Is there a scope of investigation memo is my question.
There's a scope of investigation with respect to special counsel, and that has been publicly transmitted to the chairman of this Judiciary Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee.
And who wrote it?
Who wrote that scope?
Yeah. Who decided what should be within the scope of that investigation?
I'm sorry?
Who wrote the memo? Who decided what the scope of that?
I decided what should be in the scope. If you'll compare that to the scope of many other special counsels, it basically is modeled on the format that we've used in the past.
Very
not only in this
interesting.
administration, but the previous
Very
one.
interesting.
In your remarks delivered on August 11th of this year concerning the appointment of David Weiss as special counsel, you say, upon considering his request, as well as, quote, the extraordinary circumstances relating to this matter, end quote. Can you tell us what those extraordinary circumstances were?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so these are your remarks back on August 11th.
That's me sometimes too.
And it says
Forget
on
to mute
Tuesday
the
this
mic.
week, Mr. Weiss advised me that, I'm just quoting from your memo, this is what he said.
Yes.
In his judgment, his investigation has reached a stage at which he should continue his work as special counsel, and he asked to be so appointed. Upon considering his request, as well as, quote, the extraordinary circumstances related to this matter, end quote, I've concluded it's in the best public interest to appoint him special counsel. What were those extraordinary circumstances you're talking about?
Yeah, look, all of these special counsels, including the appointment by Mr. Barr with respect to Mr. Durham, uses those phrases. The reason he uses those phrases is because that's in the special counsel regulation. I've said as much as I can say with respect to that without discussing matters relating to a pending investigation. I can't discuss matters with respect to a pending investigation for the reasons I've said.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Garland, want to welcome you today to this hearing. Want to turn our attention to something very interesting, more important. The most important thing on Main Street today in my district is drug addiction, narcotics, trafficking, fentanyl. I'm going to quote you, June 23rd of this year. You said, and I open quote, the U.S. government continues to do everything in our power to disrupt fentanyl trafficking and to prevent more of our communities from being devastated by the fentanyl epidemic. We went on to say we are targeting every step of the movement, manufacturing, and the sale of fentanyl from start to finish. Mr. Garland, I believe that the only thing that cartel leaders fear is a United States prison. I want to thank you for the good job. You recently extradited Oviedo Guzman Lopez, El Chapo's son. Thank you very much for that good job. My question is, do you have plans to extradite additional cartel leaders from other parts of the world to the United States to face U.S. justice and a U.S. prison sentence?
Yeah, I don't want to get into discussions, diplomatic discussions over the matter, but obviously we have indicted the other Chapitos, Chapito being the nickname given to the sons of El Chapo.
How many of those? How many are there of those?
Trying to remember, I think there are maybe 4 more, maybe 5, I'm not sure exactly.
I don't
They've
know
all
why
been
they're
publicly
so.
indicted,
Look,
and of course, we will seek the
Please.
extradition of it and the apprehension of everyone we've indicted.
The apprehension, the indictment of these individuals requires that you have cooperation from foreign countries, especially Mexico, since that's where a lot of these cartels are operating. Would you say right now Mexico is cooperating with us in terms of working with your office to bring these cartel leaders to justice?
They've obviously worked with us with respect to Ovidio. His apprehension by the Mexicans led to the deaths of a significant number of Mexican Marines. videos people fighting back with 50 caliber machine guns, and the Marines having to use Black Hawk attack helicopters in order to arrest him.
Are these U.S. Marines or Mexican?
I'm sorry?
Marines? United States Marines?
No, I'm sorry, Mexican Marines. It's the Mexican Marines who are playing an important role in the apprehension of the cartel leaders.
So, Mr. Garland, would you characterize cooperation right now with Mexicans as being good,
Look,
not good?
I would say cooperation can always be better. We have an enormous problem with respect to fentanyl coming from Mexico, from its manufacture there, based on the precursors coming from China, based on the cartel leaders.
How can we as members of Congress help you make sure that other countries have stronger cooperating relationship with us? How can we make sure that they cooperate to their fullest abilities with you?
I appreciate that request. I'll have to think about it some more. I will say that I personally traveled to Mexico twice to try to get cooperation with respect to these matters.
How important is FISA and 702 to your job when it comes to fighting narco fentanyl?
It's very important. Fentanyl poses a national security problem for the United States.
So can you work with us to assure that we put guardrails put guardrails, safety measures on 702 to assure that those investigative weapons are not turned against U.S. citizens?
Absolutely. 702 is a crucial, essential tool, but like all tools, it has to be properly controlled. And we would be happy to work with Congress to make sure the civil liberties are protected.
My last minute, I wanted to turn to the antitrust area, the European Union, and the Digital Marketing Act, which is Digital Markets Act, which is designed to protect consumers in Europe. Yet, it looks like most of their focus is on American firms. No European companies or other foreign operators in the European Union are being targeted. It looks like it's only American firms operating in Europe. And it looks like the DOJ is working to support the efforts of the Europeans in implementing the Digital Marketing Act. I have 18 seconds. I'm going to submit a written question to your office. But my focus, my interest is making sure American jobs, American companies are successful around the globe and that they are not in any way hampered from working overseas. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I ran out of time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 5 minutes. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Attorney General. You know, following your confirmation, Americans were promised they were getting a focused, nonpartisan to lead their federal law enforcement. I had my doubts back then. And the last 2 years have more than confirmed in my mind those fears. Never in my life would I have thought that I would see such a politicized DOJ. Never in my life would I have thought I would see such a Department of Justice that didn't obey their own rules. Never in my life did I think I would see the egregious investigations conducted under your watch, or the blatant disregard of the First Amendment by FBI field offices under your watch. And never in my life did I think I would see our great DOJ turn into a politicized weapon to be wielded by an investigation to attack political rivals. I still hold the thousands of hardworking staff with high regard, but unfortunately there are some within the department, in my mind, who have betrayed their oaths. And for that, you must be held accountable. I hold you accountable for the labeling of parents as domestic terrorists standing up for their proper education of their own children. I hold you accountable for the anti-Catholic memo. Imagine sending agents undercover into Roman Catholic churches because they were supposedly domestic terrorists. And I hold you accountable for unleashing a special counsel with a history of botched investigations on our current president's political rival. The department under your leadership, I am sorry to say, has become an enforcement arm of the Democratic National Committee. If there is a perceived threat to the Democratic Party, this DOJ attacks every single time. But when there are actionable threats against conservatives, this DOJ stays put. Protesters outside, violent protesters outside the Supreme Court justice's home, unpunished. Attacks on pro-life centers, unpunished. The two-tiered system of justice is clear, and it's clear to the American public. And the buck stops with the man in charge. That man is you. The actions of the DOJ are on you. The decline of Americans' trust in our federal law enforcement is on you. The political weaponization of the DOJ is on you. Attorney General, I need a simple yes or no to the following. Just yes or no, because we don't have much time. Yes or no.
Let me answer what you've said in that long list of statements, and
I
I'll be
control
happy to answer all of those.
Attorney
But let me
General, I
just-
control the time. I'm going to ask you to answer the
you
questions I asked.
controlled time by asking me a substantial number of things. And let
I
me
didn't
give-
ask you those things. I
will
made a
answer
statement.
I
Attorney
will-
General, through the chair, I ask you, do you agree that traditional Catholics are violent extremists? Answer
I have
the
no
question.
idea. Let me
Catholics
just,
that
can
go
I
to
answer
church.
May I answer your question?
Yes
The
or no?
Oh my
idea that
goodness.
someone with my family background would discriminate against any religion is so outrageous, so absurd.
Mr. Attorney
It's hard to
General, it
even
was
answer
your
question.
FBI
No, it's
that
absurd
did
that
this.
you
It was
wouldn't stop the
your
FBI from doing
FBI
it.
that was sending, and we have the memos, we have the emails, we're sending undercover agents into Catholic churches.
Both I and the director of
This
the
is
FBI
the
have said that we
director of
were
the FBI.
appalled, have said that we were appalled by that memo.
So then you agree that
The
they're not extremists?
We were appalled by that memo.
Are they extremists or not, Attorney General?
I think
Are
that
they extremists or not, Attorney General?
everything in that memo is
Are they
appalling.
extremists or not? I'm asking a simple question. Say no if you think that was wrong.
Catholics are not extremists, no.
Was anyone fired for drafting and circulating the anti-Catholic memo?
You have in front of you the inspection division's investigation.
Just tell me
of
yes or no, please.
I don't know.
We have
the
no
answer.
time.
I don't know the answer to that. There's
Okay,
a
do you agree that
disciplinary
parents attending
process
school
that the
board
Attorney
meetings should be
General is not
categorized?
permitted
Should
to
parents
intervene
that,
in.
should parents that go to school board meetings and are very vocal about their kids' education, should they be classified as domestic terrorists?
Of course not, and my memo made clear that vigorous objections to policies in schools are protected
So it's no.
by the First Amendment.
The president this week accused you, not the president himself, his staff, and it was in the Wall Street Journal, and it was leaked out, of mismanaging the Hunter Biden probe. Do you agree? Yes or no? It was in the Wall Street
Do I
Journal
agree
article.
with
I'm
the
not
Wall-
saying
I'm
that.
sorry. Do I agree with the Wall Street Journal?
Yes, and that the information they released that said you botched this probe.
Yeah, I think I've dealt with the Hunter Biden investigation in the way I've told this.
Mr. Chairman, I yield my remaining time to you.
I appreciate it. The gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General Garland, for your decades of service to the Department of Justice, to our country, and to our Constitution. It's been truly honorable service, and I think the American public as a whole recognizes that. I was struck by and appreciate your opening statement in which you made crystal clear your fidelity to the U.S. Constitution and the rule of law, and your reaffirmation that the Attorney General is not the President's lawyer. This is a welcome change from the rhetoric and actions of some of your predecessors in the last administration when they appeared before us. As we all should know, the Justice Department works for the American people to prosecute crimes, uphold the rule of law and Americans' individual rights, and keep our country safe. And Congress, of course, has a legitimate duty of oversight. But the blatantly political and misleading rhetoric which we've been subjected to today undermines the seriousness of this committee's work and ultimately the legitimacy and core values of our American institutions. It's painfully obvious to anyone who cares about our Constitution that our colleagues have called this hearing not to conduct legitimate oversight, but to once again defend the indefensible actions of the disgraced, twice impeached, and now repeatedly indicted in multiple jurisdictions former president, and to distract from their inability to perform the most basic function of Congress, to fund the federal government. So they're baselessly accusing the U.S. Department of Justice of bias against the former president and his allies. But it's important to note that those who are noisily and shamelessly trying to subvert our justice system are the same ones who seem to have both the most to fear from those ongoing investigations and the most to gain politically and personally from impeding them. As others have noted, these attempts now include trying to defund the Office of Special Counsel, Jack Smith's office, altogether. I, like so many Americans, find this behavior contemptible and far beneath what we should expect from our country's leaders. Mr. Attorney General, why is it so important for both upholding the rule of law and maintaining public trust that our justice system be able to conduct investigations into wrongdoing free from political interference?
The criminal law can impose incredible sanctions on people. It can take away their liberty. That means due process has to be followed during investigations, and that partisan considerations not play a role. That civil liberties and civil rights are protected, and the only way that can happen is if prosecutors are permitted to go about their work without any external impermissible interventions or considerations.
Thank you. I did want to take the opportunity, since this is an oversight hearing, to conduct some actual oversight. And there was an important topic in your testimony, safeguarding the right to vote. During the previous administration, I asked department officials in this committee room what actions they were taking on this critical issue, and they couldn't answer me. So could you describe the efforts that your Department of Justice is taking to protect the right to vote, a fundamental pillar of our democracy?
Are the Democrats catching on?
Yes. The Congress, in the form of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, authorized the department to bring cases and to enforce the Constitution of the United States with respect to the right to vote. As I'm sure you know, in the Shelby County case, the Supreme Court eliminated one of our tools, Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, but we retained Section 2, which the Supreme Court again endorsed in its last term. So we have brought cases in a number of jurisdictions where we felt that state laws unconstitutionally impinged on the right to vote. We have supported private parties when they've brought those cases, particularly in redistricting cases that violated the anti-dilution requirement of Section 2. We have a task force with respect to threats against election workers, because threatening election workers and stopping them from going about their work is a significant way in which the right to vote can be impinged. That's just a sampling.
And we certainly saw evidence of that in Pennsylvania during the last presidential election. So we really appreciate all those efforts. You know, I find this hearing very disturbing in that we have elected officials misleading the public, attacking the foundations of our democracy, trying to sow distrust on one of the most critical pillars of that democracy, the U.S. Department of Justice. It's unacceptable and it's un-American.
As we see, we have more
Mr. Chair, I seek
protection
unanimous
on the part of the
consent to enter into
Democrats,
the record a fact sheet
accusing
on
us
the
of
Department of
what
Justice's
they are in
work under
fact
Attorney
doing.
General Garland's leadership to safeguard Americans' right to vote and protect our election officials and workers.
Without objection.
Now they're
Thank you. I yield
attempting
back.
to adopt our talking points and accuse us of defunding the
Committee will be in
police
order.
and
Committee will
suggest
be in
that they
order.
will be the ones to protect the elections.
Vacillated,
Please
please.
like and share. Thank you for being here.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General,
Thank you.
on August 11th, 2023, you appointed Mr. Weiss special counsel. You wrote a letter to the House and Senate Judiciary Committees where you cited extraordinary circumstances requiring the appointment. You avoided answering the question when Mr. Benz asked you. I'll give you another chance to answer it. What were those extraordinary circumstances?
I'm afraid I'll have to give you the same answer I gave before. I've gave as much as I can give, which is that he thought that it had reached a stage where it would be appropriate, that I had promised him that I would give him any resource that he needed, and that he asked for it. And to go further would go into a pending investigation.
Okay, let's talk about that authority. Back on March 1st, you told the Senate Judiciary Committee that Mr. Weiss had the full authority to bring cases in other jurisdictions if he felt it was necessary. On June 7th, Mr. Weiss wrote to the Judiciary Committee stating he had been granted ultimate authority over the matter, including responsibility for deciding where, when, and whether to file charges. But by June 30th, he had changed his tune and said that his charging authority was geographically limited, and it would be up to the U.S. Attorney's Office and then you to determine whether he can partner on the case, and if not, he can request special attorney status from the AG pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 515, and he had been assured that if necessary, he would be granted 515 authority in D.C., Central District of California, or any other district where charges could be brought. Let me ask you, is there some distinct legal authority known as special attorney status?
I'm sorry.
Is there some distinct legal authority known as special attorney status?
Yeah, Section 515 permits the Attorney General to sign an order to authorize a prosecutor to work in another district.
And if you had already decided that he had full authority, why did you feel it was necessary to sign that document?
I'm sorry.
Why did Mr. Weiss feel that he would need that extra authority if you had conveyed to him that he would have all that authority?
You'll have to speak with Mr. Weiss about that. I think his 3 letters are quite clear that he understood he would have the necessary authority and that no U.S. attorney could block him.
Okay. We asked you earlier about his request for this authority, and we need to know who he spoke to about this authority and when. Before he asked you in August, he had discussions about this with others at the department. Who did he discuss special counsel authority with, and when did he do that?
I'm not going to discuss internal deliberations of the department. I guaranteed that Mr. Weiss would have the authority that he needed, and the moment he asked for the authority, I gave it to him.
Did he discuss it with the Deputy Attorney General?
Again, I'm not going to get into discussions of deliberations within the Justice Department.
That is not a valid constitutional objection.
Well, that is a valid constitutional deliberation. It has to constitutional objection. It has to do with the ability of the Justice Department to do its communications, just as your deliberations with your staff and with other members are protected by the Constitution.
Detailing who had conversations and when does not implicate the internal deliberations at the department. The substance of those deliberations, simply detailing who and when, does not implicate those.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the internal discussions of the department or who talked to who about what. Mr. Weiss has told this committee that he well understood his ability to bring a case wherever he wanted, and I have said that he had that ability.
Do you think that the extraordinary circumstances that you cited in the appointment have anything to do with the June 22nd and July 19th testimony of whistleblowers, Special Agents Shapley and Ziegler?
I don't think it has anything to do with Mr. Shapley, no.
Gentleman,
I'll yield to the chairman.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding. Mr. Garland, have you or are you investigating who leaked the information that appeared in the Washington Post on October 6, 2022 about this investigation, about the Hunter Biden investigation?
You're saying there was an October 2022...
October 6, 2022, Washington Post writes a story about the Hunter Biden investigation. I wonder, have you investigated who leaked that information to the Washington Post?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Has it been referred to the Inspector General? Do you know that?
I don't want my answer to suggest that there is or isn't such an investigation. I know that the Inspector General sent a letter to Congress explaining that he had an ongoing assessment with respect to the whistleblowers' charges. I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
Wow, he is really slick.
Expired. The chair now recognizes
He is
the
so
gentleman
slick.
from
Okay,
Colorado.
thank you guys for being here. Please like and share this out.
Thank the chairman and the ranking member for holding this hearing. Thank you, Attorney General, for your testimony, for appearing before us, and for your service to our country. I have great respect for my colleague from Virginia on the other side of the aisle. I'm a bit confused as to why they have zeroed in or focused in on this particular letter in such a myopic way, but your testimony, and I wrote down words here, that the moment he, meaning the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney, Mr. Weiss, asked for the authority, I gave it to him. Seems pretty straightforward. And as you said, the letters that Mr. Weiss has written to this committee are publicly available, and encourage anybody who's watching these hearings to certainly review those.
He almost started crying. He did. Guys over on Field are noticing that Attorney General Garland
in terms of reading those letters collectively. I think it's important, Mr. Attorney General, to perhaps talk a bit about your record and your background in light of the various
Hello, a boneless
attacks,
chicken.
unfortunately, by
Good
my
morning.
colleagues on the
Hey,
other side of the
Crisco,
aisle.
how are you?
My understanding is that you served as a
Thank you
special
guys for being
assistant
here.
to the
We're on
Attorney
Building
General of the United
Foxwell.
States early on in your career. Is that right?
It's my first job out of being a law clerk.
Your first job
Reanimator
out of law
over
school.
on
You later
Being out of,
Rumble.
after law
Welcome.
clerk.
Thank you
after
for
law
being
clerk,
here.
of course. You later were in
Whipple
private
Will.
practice,
Yes,
and you left
Welcome.
private
Good
practice to
morning.
become a line attorney at the Department of Justice.
Hellcat Chally.
that's right, to be an assistant U.S.
Good
attorney.
morning.
An assistant U.S. attorney, a federal
Lilith.
prosecutor,
Welcome.
taking on organized crime cases, drug trafficking cases, violent crimes.
Yes, I don't know about the
to
organized
everybody
crime,
over on
organized
Rumble.
drug trafficking, yes.
Following that service, you served in the Department of Justice as the principal associate
Attorney General.
Attorney General.
Deputy Attorney General, yes.
Deputy Attorney General. This is in the mid-90s.
That's right.
And in that capacity, you supervised a range of high-profile cases. Is that right?
Yes, they were high-profile
The
cases.
Unabomber case?
The what?
The Unabomber
The
case.
Unabomber case, yes.
The Atlanta Olympic
The
bombing.
Olympic bombing, yes.
The Oklahoma City bombing case.
Olympic, yes, that's
You
right.
received praise with respect to that latter investigation from the then Republican governor of the state of Oklahoma. Is that right?
Yes, who was a very good partner in the investigation with respect to Oklahoma.
You then were nominated and appointed to the federal bench, the U.S. District Court of Appeals here in Washington, D.C., correct?
For the U.S. Court of Appeals, yes.
Right. You were confirmed by a bipartisan majority. Over 20 Republican senators voted for your confirmation.
I'll take your word for it. I think that's correct.
You served on the bench for a significant period of time, ultimately becoming the chief judge.
Yes, that's right.
You left that position to return to the Department of Justice, where you had started your career.
Yes.
And you were confirmed into this position in which you now hold on a bipartisan basis in the Senate.
Yes.
I think it's unfortunate, Mr. Attorney General, that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have conflated questions about various cases that the department has brought with impugning your integrity. And I can assure you that the vast majority of the American people don't share their opinion, and that my constituents, the folks back in Colorado, are grateful for your lifetime of service that you have given to this country. And I recognize that this is, I suspect, a frustrating exercise in terms of this particular hearing, because I suspect that you'd like to be talking about the prevalence of fentanyl in our communities and the work that the Department of Justice is doing to interdict it, the gun violence epidemic in our country, and the work that the FBI and other law enforcement agencies are doing to stop it. And my hope is that the next oversight hearing, perhaps those can be the focus, the bulk of the hearing. I'd be remiss if I didn't say one note about a rule that the Department of Justice recently promulgated. As you may recall, in 2021, March of 2021, I sent a letter to the Department of Justice requesting that the Department of Justice issue a rule regulating stabilizing braces. One of these braces was used, as you might recall, at a mass shooting in my community in Boulder, Colorado, where 10 Coloradans tragically lost their lives, including one police officer. And the Department of Justice issued a final rule earlier this year on this precise topic. Unfortunately, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have made it their mission to overturn this rule. I wonder if you might be able to just elaborate a bit on how the rule was drafted and deliberated within the department.
Yes, well, that horrific event in Boulder was one of several examples of the use of attachment of a semi-automatic pistol to a stabilizing brace intended to permit its firing from the shoulder. That violates the rule, the congressional statute against short-barreled rifles being possessed without registration, anything under 16 inches. The reason for Congress's statute, which I think probably goes back to the Al Capone era, was the power of such a weapon and the ability to aim such a weapon when it's shouldered. All that was done in this rule was to make clear that if you convert a pistol into a rifle designed to be fired from the shoulder, you're subject to the registration requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. I yield back.
The Attorney General has requested a short break, so the committee will stand in recess for a few minutes, and then we'll be back for the remainder of our members' questions.
Okay, everybody, they're going on a short break, so for the meantime, I want to play this classic clip. This was pointed out by one of our listeners over on Rumble, so I'm going to quiet this one down, and I'm going to go ahead and share this tab so that we can watch this. You guys may remember this classic clip.
Cooper, AC 360, CNN weeknights 10 Eastern.
A lot of odd things happen in Planet Washington. I actually thought this was kind of an April Fool's joke when I saw it today, but it's not. It took place last week in a House Armed Services Committee hearing discussing a military buildup on the island of Guam. Here's Georgia Congressman Hank Johnson. Listen.
This is a island that at its widest level is 12 miles from shore to shore, and at its smallest level or smallest location, it's 7 miles between one shore and the other. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact dimensions, but to your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island.
Very small island, and about 24 miles, if I recall, long.
We're playing this because this senator was still up there today
long,
asking
about
questions, very
7
important ones.
miles wide at the least widest place on the island, and about 12 miles wide on the widest part of the island. And I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure with me, sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that.
I got to say, I'm impressed with the Admiral Robert Willard.
We just wanted to make sure that y'all saw that, because some of these senators up here, the questions that they ask and the things that they say are so ridiculous. And you can tell that, you don't want to blame the voters for that, So, but thank everybody for being here. Let's see if I'm not sure how long they will be. They're still just sort of milling about. I'll go ahead and put that screen back on so that y'all can see that. Let's go and see what everybody over on Rumble is saying. Let me add this to the studio real quick. Go and see. Okay. Rob Maga says, yep, Hank is the one that said Guam will tip over. That's right. Ah, Hank, targeting the Supreme Court justices. Uh-huh. Lilith said, what was he asking? Yeah. Rob said, I had to mute Schiff. He's a propagandist. And then everyone was laughing at Swalwell. I see a few people laughing at Swalwell. I don't want to read some of the comments about Swalwell because Hellcat Jolly says, Trump did win. Tons of evidence. Rob Maga says, so much drama, now do BLM riots. Yep, they want to gloss over everything. Exactly. They're just acting. That's the crazy part. That's what gets me, is how they're acting shocked about different things. And they're acting as though they're not the ones that were wanting to defund the police, right? They're acting as though we're the ones that would like to defund the police, and they're the ones that want to protect the election. See how they'll just try to shift it. They'll just try to, Reanimator says, Garland, your days as AG are growing short. Yep. Rob Mega says, yes, because of what Jayapal wanted to talk about. He says, yeah, because abortion is the most important thing currently. Yep. Jayapal is a moron. The border, corruption, do those next. Rob Mega, I agree with you over on the Rumble chat. Good morning, Hellcat Chally. Truth is power. Good morning. Truth is power says integrity. I know, to hear Garland, Merrick Garland discuss integrity and the Democrats discuss integrity. It's fun. Hellcat Jelly says, impeach Garland now. I agree with you. Absolutely. B. Perry says, anyone with a brain shares the opinion that this is one of corruption. Go figure. Yeah, worthy of impeachment. Yeah, I agree. Right. That was really, yeah. So, oh, you're saying is Hank a flat earther? I bet he could be convinced of those things because somebody got to him, and somebody, I'm sure he didn't just stay up at night, thinking real deeply on about Guam tipping over. Somebody fed that to him because that's real off the wall. I don't know. He was concerned about it and he brought it up. All right. What do you expect the man to do? He heard about it, thought it sounded, thought it was worth looking into a little bit. We can't blame the man for wanting to know. Right? So thank everybody for being here. What's going on over on the Pilled and Foxhole chat? Duppy says, I call affirmative action hires Guam tippers. Guam tippers? That's funny. Consider it stolen. Here's your DEI. Yep, exactly. Magoose is a POS Bilderberg stooge. That's what I agree with you. Crisco says, "You heard it here. Praise for another fake ASS narrative." I can't cuss anymore, Crisco. I can't read those comments. Hello, Adam Hugapug. How are you? Hello, Boneless Chicken. Glad you're here. Let me see. I can share this tab so y'all can see what we're. Oops. I can share this tab instead so y'all can see what's going on over on Pilled and Foxhole. Okay, let's see. Hello, Subpack Bet. How are you, Patriot Drummer? Duppy. Guam Swampers. I don't know. Guam Tipper's funny. This sounds funny. It just kind of sounds goofy. I like Guam Tipper. Welcome, everybody. Let's see. Don't let this hearing stuff ruin your day. Yes, absolutely, guys. Don't be upset. This is funny. Guys, this is comedy hour. Okay, so don't feel down. This is such a good thing that's happening right now for our country. We actually have to have this examined and we have to. It's very, very important. So yeah, be happy. I agree with you, and that's a great point, actually. Crisco, that's a great point. She says, laugh often and pray, pray, pray. And she's doing cartwheels and dancing and enjoying flowers. Okay, so great job. Crisco, I agree with you. Have a blessed day. Don't let this cookie fake ass hearing stuff ruin your day. Let's see. That's why the committee membership is such a carrot. TV time and opportunity to confront people in public. Yes, Sheila Jackson Lee was enjoying it. Every now and then it's entertaining, though. But the people need to understand, we need to get the people on the same page. So if more people, would watch this and sort of, Patriot Drummer says, Guam is not a lily pad for folks. Is Guam a lily pad? Did we not know that? Are there islands out there that are actually just lily pads we've been building on? Yes, show and tell, just a game they play. It is a show and tell, it's a game they play. But if we get good representatives up there, they'll do a good job. I mean, it's theater, but so you want to get good people. You can't win if you don't play the game. So we've got a lot of good people up here, questioning them, making sure that they understand people are watching. But yeah, so I just want to thank everybody. Let's go over here on Rumble. All right, Hellcat Chelly. Let's see. He's dodging everything. Okay, Shelly says there were hundreds of feds at J6, right? But and so as long as they drag the investigations out, it accomplishes a couple of things at once, you know? As long as they drag the investigations out, for one thing, the statute of limitations can expire, just like they were discussing earlier. But for another thing, they get to keep dodging questions, saying, I can't discuss anything that's part of any potential ongoing investigation. And it's funny because in that they kind of reveal that there's an investigation, and then the House reps will say, wait, so okay, so you're investigating this. And then he'll even dodge that and say, I can't confirm that we're even investigating anything. I can't say whether there is or isn't an investigation about something. So that's how they're doing this. So that's why we have to, that's why at Taking Back Texas, and our website's up if you want to go and check out takingbacktexas.org. That's why we're going over the administrative deep state. That's the deep state is real, y'all, and that's what I try to tell people. It needs to be it needs to be checked. So the deep state is the administrative state, and we are in an administrative state currently, in contrast to a representative republic, which is what we're designed to be. So the administrative state is these executive agencies which have too much power, and they've gained too much power through what's called non-delegation, where the legislature creates these agencies and defers their lawmaking power on certain issues. Now it seems like almost every issue to these executive agencies. Then they have no enforcement mechanism with which to take back the power. They shouldn't have done it in the first place. They violated the non-delegation doctrine. When they give their lawmaking authority over to the executive branch, that's a violation of the separation of powers. They want to talk about a separation of powers issue. No, they don't, because the original separation of powers is non-delegation, where our legislature gave power to the executive branch to put people like Merrick Garland in charge in the first place and to go practically unchecked. Okay, so that's why we're working on the specific types of legislation that we are at Taking Back Texas, and we're looking for the legislators that are going to get in and fight and say, you know what? No, I'm filing this legislation to bind these executive agencies to the will of a duly elected legislature. Every single rule that they come up with needs to be adopted, voted on, and approved by a duly elected legislature. They can create them, but they need to present them and be approved by the legislature. So we're working on legislation to bind people like Merrick Garland and your state's Secretary of State. I know a lot of you guys out there are going to like that. We are working on legislation to bind the Secretary of State to the will of a duly elected legislature. Okay, so visit takingbacktexas.org to learn more about that. We train poll watchers to document the effects of these wheels off elections, the election procedures that are enacted by executive branch agencies. Like at the state level, it will be your Secretary of State. He'll be authorizing, he or she or they will be authorizing all kinds of stuff that the legislature doesn't even know about. So that's why the legislators, they might be great people, but they don't know what all has been authorized or the details of these things. And that's why they have to be confronted about this, not attacked, but confronted about this and say, hey, are you able to detail these election procedures that have been that the Secretary of State has authority over creating? Do you know anything about them? Like, if we were just to sit you in a room right now and ask you, with no computer, would you know? Okay, with no computer, no. With a computer, would you be able to even look up everything and be satisfactory, in your explanation to me as to how elections are conducted? Because no, they wouldn't be. They don't know. They'd be like, well, I'd have to read up on all this stuff, And if their answer was, I have to read up on the election code, that would be better, because then it should be uniform. In fact, in Texas, our elections should be uniform, and they should, be designed to prevent fraud, because we vote a secret ballot in Texas, like most states do. They should be doing, as long as these machines aren't tracking our vote, then we should all be voting a secret ballot. And once an unlawful ballot is cast and accepted, there's no way to get it back out, because you can't tell the ballots apart. There's no identifying marks on the actual ballots, which is what's funny about the whole, we can't release those because it's voter privacy stuff. Now, the ballots are totally anonymous. All of the records should be anonymous. It's crazy. We even have ways for a voter to be able to summon their individual ballot that's written into state statutes, but the Secretary of State has authorized them to abandon following that particular statute so that the ballots are not numbered according to law and are very difficult to audit. Okay, so that's an example of some of the stuff that the Secretary of State and these election officials are doing, and we want them, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. There's no statute that exists that allows them to just make stuff up or to violate other state statutes or the state constitution, which they are violating as well, because they're changing so the state constitution says that our ballots shall be numbered, and the state statute 52.062 is very specific about how they shall be numbered, and they shall be pre-numbered, not numbered as the ballots making their selection. They're supposed to be pre-numbered based on another statute, 62.009, which backs up the fact that 52.062 says they shall be prepared by being numbered consecutively, beginning with the number 1. Okay, so the state constitution says they shall be numbered. That's how the state statutes say they shall be numbered specifically. Okay, then the state constitution also says that our law shall be securing elections from fraud. So when the Secretary of State changes the way that our ballots are numbered and tries to convince people it's secure, but it actually prevents us from being able to properly audit the records as we usually should be able to do, that's actually a violation of the state constitution because it's made our elections less secure. Do you see Keith Ingram and Christina Adkins? Okay, Keith Ingram was our director of elections in the Secretary of State's office. Because be careful, it's not always the one at the very top. Sometimes it's someone underneath them, like Keith Ingram, who was the shadow Secretary of State as far as elections go. He was the director of elections in the Secretary of State's office, and he was responsible for authorizing almost everything that's currently in place in the administration of computerized elections in Texas. Okay? The new Secretary of State has moved him out of that role. He's now in a role, he's now responsible for finding a replacement to Eric, because Texas left Eric. Okay, in this last session, he has to find a replacement to Eric to maintain our voter rolls. And one of his underlings, Christina Adkins, has been moved into the director of elections role. But she's just going to do pretty much everything that Keith Ingram tells her. That's my personal opinion. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I think is going to happen. All right, because they're like, they've been working together for a while. So, anywho, TakingBackTexas.org goes over a lot of those things. We train poll watchers to track the effects of these weird things that the SOS is implementing. We train them how to pretty much conduct a full investigation before they take it to the sheriff. We give them everything they need to say to the sheriff. Hopefully more sheriffs will create an election integrity task force in other counties in Texas, because we have one in Tarrant. But anyways, we're moving forward in Tarrant County. We are moving forward with the election security, the election integrity. So thank everybody for being here. Ew, look at him. Please like and share this out. Donations are accepted, but not required. Hey, Peppy Frost. Did I hear Garland say that Weiss asked to be special counsel as opposed to the AG selecting from a list? That means a lot. That indicates egregious violation of process beyond just making... Yeah. You know what? That's weird, Peppy Frost. Ohio left Eric too. Not enough. We need hand counts at precinct level. Yes, absolutely. And also our ballots have to be sorted by precinct. So we need to vote in precinct or otherwise have a way to sort our ballots by precinct, That is if we want to be able to audit them down to the precinct. You know what I mean? Okay, everybody. I'm going to let this go, and I'm going to run out to my car. I'll be right back.
Committee will come to order. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arizona for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, is it the policy of your office for U.S. attorneys to use prosecutorial quotas?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little difficulty hearing.
Okay, I'll get right on top of this thing. Is it the policy of your office for U.S. attorneys to use prosecutorial quotas?
To prosecute?
Yeah, do you have any prosecutorial quotas system in place?
No.
None whatsoever. That'd be anathema to your office then, right? I mean, it's not a policy. So would you be?
We don't, correct, we do not have quotas.
Right. And so would it be consistent with that when you have a prosecutor said that he wants to prosecute at least 2,000 people who are alleged to have committed a certain type of crime?
So look, I think you're referring to the January 6th question.
I'm just asking you, would that be consistent with your office's policy if somebody said, we're going to get up to 2,000 people on a particular crime? Is that consistent with your policy?
I think what that U.S. Attorney was referring to was a prediction for how many more cases would still be brought because the court had asked how many more people have
He filed a letter with the
identified.
court saying that we're looking at upwards of 2,000. We've got 1,200 more that we think we're going to get. So you don't do that for anything else, right? So you don't have anything like tax fraud. You're not saying, okay, we're going to have so many people that we want to get for tax fraud, so many people we want to get for
We don't
lying on
have
federal firearms
quotas. If a
application.
court asks us what the likely workload will be based on prosecutions and investigations that are pending, the U.S. Attorney is obligated to respond.
Did you guys provide any reference of the number of people you thought you would prosecute who were involved in the 2020 summer riots of the burning of the Portland courthouse while there were still people inside those courthouses? You didn't ever file with the court or anything, say, oh, we think we're going to have another 300, 400, whatever it may be, because you didn't file those charges, did you?
I'm sorry, I'm not following. I believe that
I'm sure you're not.
the number that you're asking about was
Let me ask you this question.
projection that the court had asked the U.S.
let's-
Attorney to make.
Let's switch topics. Maybe this one be easier to follow, I suppose. Is it the policy of the DOJ to provide advance notice to subjects before conducting a search for evidence?
It totally depends on the circumstance.
If the circumstance were that you had a guest house where the U.S. Attorney deputy U.S. attorney saying, well, we know that we suspect there's a lot of evidence there, but we're not going to really follow that up. And calls the attorney from the other side saying, we were going to do a search warrant. Would that be consistent with your policy?
Okay, again, I know this is no hypothetical, and I don't know the facts of this case, and I don't know what happened. And I believe the events you're talking about, as reported in the press, occurred under the previous administration. So
No, that event didn't happen in the previous administration. Let's talk about that. I mean, you keep saying this happened in the previous administration, but let's talk about this for just a moment. You keep saying, I don't know what happened there, but I'm going to opine when it happened. Do you see the fallacy of that, the inconsistencies? I don't know when it happened. I don't know what happened because I'm not involved, but it happened under the previous administration. That's so logically fallacious.
I'm sorry, I'm not following what's.
Yeah, I know you're not following. So the question is, you've got one of your deputy U.S. attorneys calling the attorney on this side saying, look, we're going to go to these two places, probably go in the next couple of days. And of course, then ultimately the search warrant is called off. I just want to know, is it consistent to call up people and where you know that they've got boxes of information, or you suspect they have boxes of information? That's why you got the warrant. That's why you're going to go look. And you give them a heads up so they can move those boxes of information. Would that be consistent with DOJ policy?
I'm just going to say again, you're asking me actually to comment about allegations in a particular case about.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you, is that consistent with your overall policy? Forget Delaware and what they did and that they actually did that. Let's just talk about generic policy.
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking about Mar-a-Lago. I may not have understood that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, la-di-da. So when we're talking about this, when we're talking about your general policy, is it your policy? Is that acceptable when you suspect that there are movable items to call up and say we're gonna be there to look?
Yeah, there's no policy on this question. The strategy and tactics to be used to preserve evidence are left up to the investigators and offices on the ground. Sometimes it would be a serious mistake to call up. Sometimes
here once again, you don't know what happened in the Hunter Biden case because that's somebody else is doing it. But you can be sure of the timing of when all this took place. That is one of the biggest oddities of your testimony today. I yield back to the gentleman from Colorado.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Thank you for your decades of faithful service to our country, to our Constitution, and to the rule of law. Thank you for putting up with this today. The American people are watching. They know what's going on here. This is a gross misuse of your time, your team's time, and our time. It is a shameful circus. It has a goal. The goal is to spew lies and disinformation, ultimately to tear away at the confidence of our independent institutions, in your case today, our very important Department of Justice. That's the exact MO of a former president. Tear away at the confidence of our independent institutions, whether it's our electoral system, the Department of Justice, the judiciary, and independent news media. The American people are watching this sham. But it's not just a circus, it's dangerous, and you know that, and you have mentioned that. I believe that these fictions and fantasies are dangerous. Dangerous for you and the 115,000 public servants with whom you work. Dangerous for national security. Dangerous for communities' security. Dangerous for the rule of law and our Constitution. All at the same time of a looming shutdown. The other side of the aisle cannot govern. And so they have this hearing, which was supposed to be oversight, and use it as a big distraction because they are failing to govern. Imagine if we go into a shutdown. What does that say to your members of your department? What does it say to our service members, U.S. troops who would be training, fighting without pay and without confidence in this country's governing ability? It's a great distraction. So let me pivot to something I care about, and I know you and your department cares about. It is Recovery Month. And for families like mine with a member in recovery, every month is Recovery Month. So I thank you for what you are doing on the fentanyl crisis, the overdose crisis that has claimed 110,000 lives in a single 12-month period. 300 souls a day, every day. Souls who have died while we were in this hearing, every day. What is the department doing to combat the trafficking, to combat the amount of fentanyl on the ground? As DEA has said, there's enough fentanyl on the ground right now to kill this entire population multiple times over. Tell us about your important work in fentanyl.
Well, Congresswoman, let me begin by saying I share your personal concern and grief over this. I have met with the families of children, teenagers, of elderly people who have become addicted to fentanyl and who have died from fentanyl. Everything you're saying is correct, and it's a catastrophe for the country. So as a consequence, the Justice Department has poured its resources, particularly from DEA, with FBI assistance as well, and with fugitive arrests by the Marshal Service and with gun tracing by the ATF, into the entire process by which fentanyl reaches the United States. So we have sanctioned the precursor companies in China. We have indicted some of them for their violations. We have arrested some as far off as in Fiji and brought them back to the United States. We have traced these precursors to Mexico, where they are made into the fentanyl pills. Fentanyl costs about 10 cents to make. It can be sold on the street in the United States between $10 and $30. You can see what the enormous profit motive is here. So we must stop the cartels themselves. I have, as I said, traveled to Mexico twice in order to work with our counterparts in the military and law enforcement there.
I thank you for all of that. I want to just pivot once, and I want to do anything I can to partner with you on this issue so that we stop losing people. I traveled recently with the Foreign Affairs Committee to The Hague, met with the extraordinary folks, the top prosecutor and his able team. They were very complimentary of the Department of Justice and your work. Can you tell us about your important role, or America's important role, in war crimes, especially in light of your powerful history?
Yes, I'm happy to. So I've traveled to Ukraine twice and to meet with the Prosecutor General there. And I'm going to meet with him again this week here. And he's met with me several times here. The Justice Department is pursuing the war crimes from Russia's unlawful and unjust invasion of Ukraine to help to investigate war crimes over which we have jurisdiction, to help the Prosecutor General in Ukraine investigate those prosecutions. I was, I believe, the first cabinet member ever to visit The Hague, the International Criminal Court of Justice, and to meet with Karim Khan, who is chief prosecutor, to talk about our cooperation in respect to the investigations that they are doing. I've assigned a Justice Department prosecutor to the investigatory body that's been set up in The Hague for the crime of aggression. And she is there now working with the ICC and with Europol and Eurojust. And I've assigned a prosecutor to our embassy in Kyiv to work with our ambassador there and to work with the Prosecutor General's office there.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing that answer to go on, because it is critically important. America is indispensable, and your work is indispensable. Thank you, sir.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Mr. Attorney General, do you support the consent decree that I believe was put in place in the city of Minneapolis?
And I'm sorry, do I support the?
You support the consent